Call this meeting to order of the Town of Wakefield Board of Appeals for Wednesday, April 27th, 2022. Start with a roll call of members. Jim McBain.
Here.
Chip Tarbell.
Here.
Joe Pride.
Here.
Tom Lucy.
Here.
Greg McIntosh.
Here.
Mickey Feely.
Here.
And Chair Dave Hatfield here. Amy Wall is excused. She may be here later if the meeting goes late enough. But for now, we know she's excused with a personal commitment. Okay. Let's proceed to the reading of the legal notice. Greg, you got a copy of that?
Yep.
All right.
Where'd it go? I do have a copy. All right. Consistent with the governor's orders extending certain provisions of the open meeting law, every effort will be made to allow the public to view and or listen to the meeting in real time. If you don't have a camera or microphone on your computer, you may use the following dial-in number: 1-301-715-8592, meeting ID 895-6721-4203, passcode 321521. Please only use dial-in or computer and not both, as audio feedback will distort the meeting. This meeting will be audio and video recorded. In compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, this location is accessible to people with disabilities. Wakefield provides reasonable accommodations and or language assistance free of charge upon request. If you are a person with a disability and require information or materials in an alternate format, or if you require any other accommodation, please contact the town's disability coordinator, William Renault, town engineer, at 781-246-6308 as far in advance of the event as possible. Every effort will be made to grant your request. Advance notification will enable the town to make reasonable arrangements to remove an accessibility barrier for you. 1, continued hearings. 2, 22-52, 22-53, 22-54, and 22-55. Nuraya Energy Corporation application for a variance under Article 13, Section 190-80 of the Wakefield zoning bylaw pertaining to signage requirements related to a proposed gasoline station in conjunction with a retail store and fast food. Application for a special permit under Article 7, Section 190-36C of the Wakefield zoning bylaw to allow for reductions in the requirements and or standards for off-street parking and loading related to a proposed gasoline station in conjunction with a retail store and fast food. Application for a special permit and site plan approval under Article 4, Section 190-23 and 190-45 of the Wakefield zoning bylaw for fast food in conjunction with a gasoline station and retail store. Application for a determination and or finding with respect to a continuation and extension of non-conforming uses under Article 9, Section 190-50B of the Wakefield zoning bylaw related to certain changes, extensions, or alterations to the premises, including a new building with a gasoline station in conjunction with a retail store and fast food. The property is shown on map 14C, lot parcels 17 of the assessor's map, and is located at 356 Lowell Street. Board of Appeals.
Thank you, Greg. Get tonight's agenda. We've got a couple matters that we've received some correspondence on, so as we usually do, we'll take those up front in case anyone's here specifically for them. The first one is case 22-36, Derek and Krista Popek at 259 Vernon Street. Received correspondence from the applicant requesting a continuance of their case to the next meeting, May 11th, to allow time to provide additional materials and think through our project.
I move that we continue this to May 11th.
I second that.
Thank you, Joe. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, Sans Amy. So Tom, you ready for this?
Yep.
Thank you. So voting members, Chip?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Jim? Jim? Aye. Okay, I see a waving hand.
Yes.
Thank you. Tom?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, so that's unanimous. We'll next hear that one, 259 Vernon Street at our next meeting, May 11th. We've also received correspondence on one of the projects that was previously continued regarding a special permit for an accessory apartment at 21 Mansfield Drive case number 22-40. It was under our other matters that tonight the applicant has requested. Please accept this letter as notification that I respectfully request the above referenced petition to be withdrawn without prejudice. The matter was heard as part of a separate petition at the board's April 13th, 2022 meeting.
I
Yeah.
move that,
Go ahead. Sorry.
I move that we allow them to withdraw it without prejudice.
I second that.
Any discussion on that motion? Okay, same voting members, Chip,
Yes,
Joe,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So Mansfield Drive has been withdrawn. Okay, we've also received a request, again, just because of the availability of the applicants and their teams, maybe take things a little out of sequence as the way they're probably ordered. So let's see. So do we have, yep, I see Mr. McGrail, good. So with that, I'm going to take, Mr. McGrail has a couple applications here. So we will take up the first one, continued hearing 2150, 51, and 52 CCF Corner Power Property Company LLC at 200 to 400 Corner Power Parkway.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Here on behalf of the applicant at 200-400 Corner Power Parkway. With me tonight is Matt D'Amico from Cabot Cabinet Fords. Eric Samuelson's here from Cube 3. And I think that covers us, right, Matt, for tonight?
That's right.
Okay, great. So to refresh the board's memory, we missed last meeting because we were still working on plans. We've been working twofold. First, with designated board member Jim McBain on the architectural aspects of the project. In particular, the board had raised some concerns on the design components on the 128 side. Thought it looked too much like an office building, didn't have a residential look to it. And also wanted a better understanding of some of the architectural details involved on the project as a whole. So you designated Mr. McBain to work with Cube 3 for Cube 3 to be able to do some design changes on the 128 side, and also come up with some real detailed cross sections is typical of your board to get a fuller understanding of how the buildings actually lay out and how they will look when they're built. I'm happy to report that I think we've completed that work and we will present that to you. I am sure that you will hear from your fellow board member on his thoughts in that regard. Second, as we discussed, there are some unique and detailed conditions involved with this proposal, many of which are beneficial to the town that have been requested, and many that were made as commitments to the Friends of Lake Quannapowitt early on. So the board designated the chair to work with town council, Tom Mullen, and also the town engineer to come up with conditions that would basically be enforceable and according to town council or after his review. We've had an opportunity, we've had a number of meetings with the chair and Mr. Renault, and then a meeting with town council included. And we've submitted some conditions that in a form and content that have been approved, and Tom Mullen said that he's very satisfied with them. And I'm sure that you might hear from the chair on that. I think there'll be some additional typical conditions and maybe some others, but these are the real unique ones that we wanted to get done, and the board asked us to do that, and we've accomplished that. So, and then we also, kind of like to get an idea of where we are with other aspects of this and really what the next steps are. So with that said, I think probably the best place to start is the architecture. Eric, is that something that you can handle, if you would? To maybe, you're on mute, Eric. You there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can now. You're on mute. So do you want to take the ball on that aspect of it. And then I'm sure Mr. McBain is probably going to have some comment too, since he worked hard on it. So, but I'll let you go with it first if you
Yeah,
could.
absolutely. So I'm sharing my screen now. Everyone should be able to see that. First of all, I'd like to thank Jim McBain for a couple of very productive meetings over the last few weeks. He gave us some very insightful and helpful comments, and hopefully we've done a good job responding to those. I think we are at a better place now than we were before, so I want to thank Jim on that. So this is our special permit set that we had pulled together with comments from Jim and kind of getting into more detail. I don't know if I need to go page by page through this. I certainly can if everyone would like me to. But the biggest changes from our perspective have been the building 3 elevations. I think the biggest one that we were looking at was this west elevation along 95 there. I think correctly, a couple of comments were saying it looked a lot like an office building, too commercial. It didn't have any real, residential feeling to it. So what we did is, we worked to carry the language that was on the other side of this building and carried around the backside here. There's a lot more balconies. There's more kind of ins and outs with shadow lines, as well as, working on the garage facade as well and trying to give that some texture and feeling as well as it comes across. So we did some work here. I think we got to a pretty good place with this. And then the other 2 elevations were the other 2 ends of the building. We had similar comments, and we worked with Jim on doing something similar here where, we try to carry the design language around and use, the same materials and make sure that, we have balconies and ins and outs, and so that this felt like a residential place.
So I'll pick up for a minute there, Eric.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
as noted, we had several meetings basically. And what you see before you right now is at the bottom, basically the left side, center, and then the right side, which if you look at the middle sections, basically you'll see we're just a monotone. Basically, this has been broken up into just a monotone of windows actually, and a monotone of color on the 128 side. So this has been broken up, as Eric says, with more balconies, but also with a change of color that represents a closer tune to what happens on the rest of the building and reflects basically more something that's residential than not. We also talked about the ends of this building, which basically didn't have much, had the same sort of architecture that 128 did. But we gave it basically, or they gave it, based on my comments, basically a better edge on those 2 edges. So whether you're coming down the highway or up the highway, basically you see a continuity from the rear to the edges, and then the continuity continues itself around to the front. So I'm quite pleased with the way this has come out. You might note one other thing is on the garage. Eric, if you could pull that garage elevation up. It's not just a bunch of decks, basically. It's actually got a detail to it. It looks like little trees or whatever you want to call them. It's, if anybody's been over to Wellesley College, they've probably seen the copper tubing that runs around one of their new garages. Well, I say new, it's probably 20 years old now. Is that this is similar, but it's not copper tubing, obviously, but it sort of breaks the whole garage texture up and almost gives a forestry type of appearance at this point. So you get sort of a break between what's on the right and what's on the left, and this other element, which is the garage in the middle, I think, which is quite helpful basically in pulling this together. So I'm pleased with that. And also, as noted earlier by Brian, they have gone through and done cross sections for me and details of those cross sections with dimensions, basically, so that we have them as a guide going forward when the full details come out, that we know what we're getting at this point. So I think from what I've looked at here, this package architecturally is in much better shape than it was. I should note that the elevations weren't drawn in full. Originally, there were just some renderings on this side of the building. Now we have the full drawing of this side of the building, which we really didn't have before. So we are, as far as I'm concerned, architecturally, we're there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
I'm sorry if I missed it. Did you say that we would be able to see some sort of rendering, of the, like we've got with the other parts of this project? Just so we can see it. I mean, this is helpful, but I'd also like to see more of a, 3D rendering, elevation, whatever you want to call it.
Kind of like you did on the other sides of the building, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think you have that yet, right, Eric? But that's something,
No, we did not.
yeah, but that's something you can put together.
Okay.
Yep,
Yeah.
I'm sure we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, just visually, just,
Well, Eric, you had something that we were looking at basically as concept in the discussion for this, which wasn't the final product, but was more getting a better sense of it, basically what this was going to look like. I don't know whether you want to share that or wait until you got something more permanent.
I think we should wait till we have it permanent because it's not, that was in an early form and it's not going to give a good representation of how good it looks at this point compared to what it was. If that's okay with you, Mr. McBain.
No, it's fine.
Yeah,
yeah, it's fine.
I think you'd rather see the finished product, right, Mr. Chair, than something that was like half done.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
When it's fully baked and we know that these
Yeah.
are done and then those elevations can be provided alongside, then I think that the board gets a full, clear representation of what this side of the building is going to look like potentially. So,
Yep, that's fine.
okay. Any comments or questions from the board members on this?
Yeah, Dave, it's Greg. I guess is maybe for Jim. Those, I don't know what you want to call them, fake trees. Is that what it's going to look like? Because to me, I know you said you're happy with it, but it almost looks like just unfinished boards haphazardly stuck to the side of it. If I know what you're talking about at Wellesley, there's a lot more of them than that, and they block the cars. This looks like it's like, oh, okay, yeah, they said they wanted it semi-blocked. Let's throw some things on there. Like this, to me, makes it look worse.
It's you're absolutely right. It's very thick, and the spacing is much tighter. You're absolutely right.
And throughout the whole thing, the whole elevation.
Yeah, it's quite different. It's just the concept is very similar. It's just different. And you're right. Wellesley over time, basically, if you saw it when it was first going up, it glowed because the copper basically that there took the time to age basically, and now it's a dark, it's a patinaed copper piping basically. But you're right, you can't see the garage, you can't see the cars. It's very thickly populated basically. Certainly a valid criticism of the concept. And maybe the rendering would help basically show this off a little bit more. But I don't expect, I guess, this to be covered like Wellesley did it when it first came up, and I didn't propose it. When it first came up, I looked at it and it immediately reminded me of Wellesley because I worked quite a few buildings over in Wellesley, so I was well aware of this particular project.
Yeah, this just does nothing for me. It doesn't block anything. The Wellesley garage is quite large too, so it's not like they couldn't do that here. If I'm remembering what, I mean, even especially if it's not copper and it's a cheaper material. So, but that's my 2 cents on this, I guess. And then, yeah, I guess I would need to see the renderings for the rest of it. I don't quite understand, being a non-architect, how it will look. So that's it.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, I have a quick question. Are we gonna see any of the roof equipment from the highway, or is that gonna be all blocked?
The roof equipment is not that big. It's gonna be more visible from the highway than it will be from the lake. And part of our considerations is that we've actually been trying to push a lot of the mechanical equipment away from the lake side and towards the highway side. That being said, these units are you know, the mechanical units here are similar to what you might see outside a single family home. They're pretty small. There's a lot of them, but they're pretty small.
Is there a parapet
Yeah.
on this, or is that what is that roof line basically the roof line?
There
We don't-
will be a small parapet on it.
What'd you say, Eric? We didn't hear you.
There'll be a small parapet on
Small
it.
parapet.
From this elevation view, you would see, you know, a little bit of the equipment, but from ground level, you wouldn't see any of it with your sight lines. The thing you may see is, you know, which we're showing here, is the elevator overrun. It creeps up a bit higher than any of the mechanical equipment will.
Mark, what sort of a parapet, color of a parapet? What would it be made out of? I mean, would it blend into this, or would it be?
It's this material here.
Okay.
The material would be consistent, and then the roof line would be a little bit below it, behind it.
2 feet, 3 feet, 1 foot?
Depends on the area. We have a lot of that detailed. So for example, in our wall sections, we have all of that. So this one here, you're seeing it's 2'10". Your material would carry all the way up here. So you're not kind of getting a change in material as it gets to the parapet.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, what's next, Brian?
So if I can ask on this garage issue that Greg raised, is it the board's inclination to kind of see how it looks on the rendering and then go from there, whether you want it thickened up or not? Does that make sense?
I think I would need to. It sounds like maybe others do too. Just,
Yeah, I think if you see if they put the trees in, I don't think there's that many trees there, but the landscape, you know, it's put in, it might show a little bit of contrast with landscape.
Yeah, we can certainly show that. I think one thing I do just want to note is that this is an open air garage. If we were to further enclose this side, we would have larger mechanical equipment on the roof that you would see ventilate this garage. And that's not something we want to do. It's not good for the garage or the residents. It's open air is better from that regard.
Is that because you'd be putting more of these little tree things up there? You
Yeah, you need a certain percentage of openings. Yeah, you
I'm
need a certain
sorry?
percentage of opening around the garage.
So you would have to have more ventilation, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yeah, once you cross a threshold, I forget the percentage off the top of my head, but once you cross that, you need to mechanically ventilate your garage.
There's only one side towards 128 that's open. Everything else is enclosed by the building.
Okay.
So
We have I just want to note, we do have setbacks on the sides of the buildings here between the garage and the building on both sides that allows for fresh air wells between. And that space there, and that space there.
If it looks anything like that Wellesley building, I remember when they first did it, it was gleaming, you're right. This probably won't gleam, but it wouldn't be nice to get a better handle on it.
okay, so we think we can get a look at that next time.
Yeah, you think you can do that, Eric, within a couple of weeks?
Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Okay, so moving on, what we also submitted in our packet last week was the Quantipower improvement plan. And, you know, that is the Parkway, Quantipower Parkway, I should say, improvement plan. That's kind of a boring plan that was really spec'd by the town engineer that, as you know, Mr. Chair, he's satisfied with. Do you see a need for me to bring that up? Because it's more like cross sections of roadway and stuff like that.
I mean, I don't need to see it because I've read it and reviewed it, and I'm familiar with, you know, some of those details. But do any other board members have any questions about it on that material that Brian sent us? Do you want to ask any questions? If so, then I would say bring it up and let's try to address them. But if everyone's satisfied, then I don't see the need to go through it again. But again, this speaks to the on-site and off-site right?
There's gonna be some, one of the plans I do want to bring up, it's important, I think, is well, the next thing is we submitted a materials booklet, which we had gone through materials with you, but now we have a booklet that is formalized that we submitted for the record. And again, I'm happy to go through that, but you've seen most of the materials. It's up to you if you want me to go through that in detail. But it has been submitted.
Do we need to show it to the public or?
Happy to do it. We can, we can go as much detail as you want. So let me.
Yeah, if you want to bring that up and just, maybe
Yeah.
note any changes.
Yeah,
Because if we've seen it before,
Yeah,
if we've all seen it before, it's been in public hearing before. But if something changed, maybe point those out. But I don't see the need to go too deep.
Okay.
Maybe just give a brief.
Yep.
Review.
You got it. Okay.
Ron, do you need me to bring that up or do you got it?
Why don't you do it? Because you'll be answering the questions more than me. I have it ready to go, but I think it might be better if you control it.
Yeah, absolutely. I have it right here.
Oh, great. Thank you, Eric.
Yep. So this was submitted. Again, I'll breeze through this. If you guys want me to stop at any point, please feel free. We have a table of contents here. So exterior materials, this is the nicho we were looking at. It's a vintage wood look. These two images are not of the proposed building, but examples of this product being used on completed projects. Same thing here. We have James Hardy, a mixture of vertical siding, which is a panel, and some plain collapse siding. Some examples on other buildings. And then we just go into more detail with each of the buildings, calling out where these lie, and these also tie back to the permit package that we put together, and there's material tags that tie all this together. So this FCL2, for example, you can see where that's tagged and throughout the permitting package. So everything is all tied together. And building 3. And then we just show some various examples of what we're thinking for the balconies, wire mesh balcony railing, some composite decking, the fiber cement trim and soffit detailing around the balconies. Some examples of lighting at balcony that we would propose, building entry style lighting. We have some soffit lighting that would be, a lot of times at the entry or at the breeze throughs. That we have landscape lighting, site and area lighting. More landscape lighting. There's going to be a variety of different lighting for the landscaping. And then the one thing I think we did want to note, Matt, was that all of the landscape lighting, I believe, is, I want to say this correctly, it's dark sky compliant.
Thank you for that. Yep.
Eric, you don't have anything on the new garage, right? Is that too soon for that? With that you just showed us today, that material?
For the material on the garage?
Yeah.
I don't have a material for it. I can show you an example of a product we can use. I can come prepared with that. There's manufacturers. It would be kind of a screening specialist, I guess. They do a lot of those things, and it would be custom for this project.
We need to add that to this
I
booklet.
can certainly bring an example of that. I don't have it in the booklet, no.
No, but we need to add it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, board members? Okay. Next item, Brian.
Great. So thank you. I need the screen. So as I mentioned, there's one plan. I think it's in point. Let me just find it first. That was submitted. Not that they're not all in point, but this one in particular. Here we go. Hold on, give me a hard time for some reason. Here we go.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Yes.
So in your, we're going to go through the conditions that we reviewed with you, Mr. Chair, and the town engineer and Tom Mullen, town council. And this plan will be referred to in those conditions. So this is the land preservation plan. And as you know, this project's gone on for quite a while before your board. And I think one of the significant components is the commitment of my client to preserve a significant amount of this land in perpetuity in its natural state or for public use. And that's a big condition that we will go through. And this plan is referenced because it shows and illustrates that area. And this is referenced in the condition. So this is the site. The woodland area, which is 9.333 acres, is preserved in perpetuity. This was a significant concern of the Friends of Lake Quannapowitt, all of this land and this commitment. We call it the utility easement area, just because there are some utilities in there for the state, but it's all wetland in natural land that will be preserved in perpetuity through restrictions or easements, whatever we finally negotiate with Tom Mullen, town council. And then this is the path area where we are going to construct a new path for public use in all of this land for public use, which will connect to the existing path here. So, and basically this is, hang on one second. Sorry about that. I had a little dog incident going on that I had to reconcile. This is, as I mentioned, this is the public path area. And this does connect with the other path out to Quannapowitt Parkway. This is the North Ave side of the property. This is the Lowell Street. So the paths do interconnect and intersect and connect. It's just kind of not shown on this plan, but they do, because that was a question that I asked. And then this is also referenced as a condition. You might remember early on that we had made a commitment that we would like to maintain the town-owned land, which abuts ours, because our land is going to be for public use and path, as obviously the town land is. And our land is going to be under an operation and maintenance plan and meticulously maintained by a professional landscape company. These pieces will kind of blend together. So it really doesn't make sense that the town land would have its grass cut on Monday and this would have its grass cut on Friday. So my clients, as you know, have requested and would, as a condition, would want to maintain at their expense the town-owned land and prune it, cut it, maintain the trees on that. They're not being maintained now, as you know, and it's our landscape architect and arborist had mentioned, there's a lot of them in not good state. The other thing that we've talked about with the Conservation Commission, and we've talked to your board about, there'll be an invasive species plan that's part of the conservation to get rid of a lot of this invasive species that has grown on the lakeshore that needs to come out. It's harmful. It's hurting the natural plantings in the natural habitat that's there. So that is part of our plan and condition too. So this plan really kind of itemizes this in the condition, which I will go through, I think, next.
Okay.
Any questions on this, Mr. Chair, before I get rid of it?
Nope.
Okay. So next, if I may, I'd like to, quickly go through the conditions that we have been talking about and we worked on and reviewed. with town council.
Yeah, I would ask that we don't read every word, that we just summarize condition, condition one is I&I fund. Any
Yep.
question, right? We understand the affordable housing sequence. We don't need to read every line.
Got it.
Everyone's got a copy of these. So again, unless there's questions, board members call them out. But as long as we understand the nature of these conditions, how they and what they apply to, I think we can just try to get through this.
Yep.
Rather quickly. So.
Okay, and there's other
Please go ahead.
conditions. These are the ones that we just kind of wanted to, that needed town council's input. So first one is an I&I fund requirement that we have to make a contribution to the town for infiltration, $225,880. As the chair mentioned, there needs to be a regulatory agreement to make sure that the 18% affordable housings will stay as affordable housing in perpetuity. There's a housing sequence for the affordable units to make sure that they're built in sync with the market rate units, so you don't end up with a project with all the market rate units built and none of the affordable units built. That's a traditional condition that the board imposes. Number 4 really deals with the environmental infrastructure and traffic contributions. We are being required to construct significant improvements on Quannapowitt Parkway. The estimate is it'll be about $1.75 million worth of improvements, bike path, improved sidewalks, lighting, pavement. That's all the way from North Ave in. So our contribution on that is 1.75 to do that work. The next one is as you know, through traffic advisory, they wanted some mitigation. This is a mitigation for future traffic, general growth in the area, although they determined that compared to other uses, as you know, this would not have an impact that is not acceptable under the standards, just taking into consideration other growth that's going to happen in the area and improvements that might need to happen on really the Lowell Street side of the project. Potentially the town might want to do some studies and upgrade that in the future. This was a big figure that we had to kind of come to understand. It's a pretty big amount, $600,000 that the town engineer required through his consultation with VHB, the town's traffic peer review consultant. So we've agreed to that. The next one is a contribution to the town, as was requested by the Friends of the Lake, for a total of $1.3 million that basically goes towards the Main Street project to improve the water quality of Lake Quannapowitt, which I think the board is familiar with that.
Yep.
Number 5 deals with the pathways that I talked about, that we have to construct and maintain the public recreational pathway. We call it the community path on our plan, on our property, I should say. Then we're on B, we're agreeing, as I mentioned, to maintain the portion of the town-owned land immediately adjacent to the community path. And then finally, this would deal with the land in perpetuity, that we have to put restrictions on those open areas satisfactory to town council. Can be done. We haven't, Tom hasn't decided how we would do that, but this leaves it open to his discretion on keeping that land open in perpetuity. Also, as you know, we've made a commitment to provide a substation for the Wakefield Police Department on the site, on the other side of town from where their main station is. So if some of the officers are on bike patrol around the lake, they have a place to stop and utilize restrooms and to interview people or to take a break. They're also going to have access to our bike repair area that we'll have for our residents that they can use. And this is at no charge or for nominal consideration. So Tom wanted to put in a provision that we will enter into a lease for nominal consideration to make sure that the town has rights to that, which we're fine. The next one is that, as you know, we've agreed to make public restrooms available for public use. And the restrooms have to be open and available to the public during daylight hours. So that is a condition. The next one, we discussed this, that the applicant has agreed to create a shuttle bus system providing transportation service between our property, the Wakefield MBTA commuter rail station in downtown Wakefield. The details and the frequency would be worked out prior to a certificate of occupancy, and it has to be satisfactory to the town of Wakefield's Economic and Community Development Director. So whatever our plan is, we need to satisfy her or other town official designated by the town administrator. So that's fine. The next thing that was a requirement, and this, Mr. Chair, you've mentioned this was our neighbor that was concerned about this too. And so we put a provision in that 49 of the parking spaces on our site will be designated for public and visitor parking of the property in Lake Quannapowitt. So they'll be available on a first come, first served basis. But if folks from the town, public want to go to that end of the lake and enjoy the new park, the new walkway and recreate, they have a place to park.
That would include the restaurant area because they're on that side.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
That would include, yeah, whoever visits the property. That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. A lot of times, I think, when the restaurants, the restaurant will have lunch, but let's face it, the bigger part of the restaurant is going to be dinner. And, I think most people are going to want to recreate around the lake. You probably get a lot of activity there in the morning and the afternoon. So, and the final one that we talked about is the other land preservation really dealt for the pathway use. This deals with all the other areas, the woodlands, the utility easement area. So this again is a restriction that will go on the property satisfactory to town council. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chair, but those are what we worked out with Tom.
Okay, board members. Okay.
Dave, I mean, is it possible to, I don't have any questions now, but we just got them yesterday, so I didn't quite understand how they interacted with
Right.
the plan. So could we ask questions next week too? We're not just closing this off, right?
No, if you have a
Yeah.
follow-up, definitely, yeah.
Yeah,
We
all
did
right.
get them a little later than usual.
Yeah.
And, as Brian said up front, these aren't necessarily all the potential conditions because
Yeah.
things we would typically have. These are the ones where there were meetings with Matt, Brian, myself, Bill Renault, the town engineer, Tom Mullen. Just again, some of these figures had to be calculated, getting the wording right that the town and, town council were comfortable with, enforceable, so that's why I went through a few rounds and that's why he's calling these out specifically, because of that peer review that we kind of needed to make them so. But yeah, if you have other questions tying them back, he did mention that landscape plan and that, that he showed previous to this. So yeah, review them. If you have any questions, we can circle back quickly next time. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Anything else, Brian?
Yeah, I do want to touch on the Conservation Commission, where we are with the Conservation Commission. So we have had a number of meetings with the chair of the Conservation Commission, Jim Luciani, and Rebecca Davis, the conservation agent, regarding requested modifications of our plan. Let me bring it up again. It's probably easier to show the plan if I could.
By the way, I do see a hand up on the Zoom. We will open up the public testimony momentarily. So please hang tight.
So we had a number of meetings with them, very good meetings, really good working meetings. And what they did is they made a little change here. Can you see my mouse?
Yep.
Yeah, they want us to pull this roadway back a little bit, which we did. And then we also pulled back a little bit further, which really increased the utility easement conservation area. They wanted us to get away as much as we possibly could. You wouldn't even really notice it unless I pointed it out to you. And they had some different drainage design schemes that they wanted in this area that they thought would be better for conservation purposes, which we were happy to accommodate. But nothing else has changed on the site. And I never as you know, it's always important to me to keep any boards that are looking at a plan in parallel to make sure that they stay consistent. I think there's a chance that conservation is ready to close their hearing on this. And that potentially could happen tomorrow night. So I would like, to know from your board that as far as the site layout goes, that you are okay with this and you wouldn't have a problem with them closing their hearing. I'd like the board to kind of agree with that, because I didn't want to have that done and then have you folks say you should have let us know.
Okay, appreciate that. Board members, any comments, questions?
No,
No, and Mr. Chair, I think that goes along with potentially all the plans that we've been getting, and that there should and needs to be a plan reconciliation. And just making sure that not to get caught short, and make sure we know exactly what we're getting or what we're voting on when it comes to voting. And unfortunately, there's only one guy that I think should handle that, who just made a scoffing noise. But Jim usually tends to do that to make sure that the plans that we've okayed or have seen, since he's usually often the one as well that takes the building set and compares them. We got to make, so I would move that we allow Jim to work with the petitioner as he did with the 128 side and stuff, just to make sure that we got all the correct site plans, all the right plans.
Architectural landscape, they're all up to date.
Yeah.
They're all consistent. If
Correct, and they're tied into Concom and all these other questions, which just kind of came up.
so
Okay.
on that point for a minute, it seems like a segue into landscape. The last landscape, and maybe Eric can give me an answer on this. The last landscape I have, it might be different posted on the website, I have is 331. And it has a planting list, but the planting list is not keyed to the plants. And nor can I find anything that calls for irrigation, basically. So I don't think we have the right drawing yet. So along with other things that they need to clean up, this is one, unless it already cleans up and I just don't have it. That the L100 basically doesn't seem to be fully coordinated.
Matt, do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so just to fully understand here, so the latest submitted landscape drawings will be on April 8th. So we have a landscape schedule. There's, I don't even know the number of trees on this at this point, but we have a planting schedule, but it doesn't show, each circle on here doesn't have the exact tree type beyond just general deciduous versus, evergreen. Is there something more specific that you're looking for here?
Yeah, we want to know where, I mean, Chip usually is in on this one basically, but we want to know, where the particular tree is or bush is or whatever, basically. It doesn't mean that every dot has to be labeled, but a group of dots basically should be labeled. So in fact, we know what the species is at that location. Right now, it's anybody's guess at this point, because they're not correspondingly labeled as to where they are. Whether that means you've got to segue this into broken up sections so that you can actually physically denote what goes there, basically would be important to us. Plus, it would be important to us later on that the landscaper, whoever does the job, assuming that it gets approved, knows what the heck they're supposed to be putting in there. And we've already pre-approved that. That does not mean that in the future, if you have some issues, you can't bring them back to us and say, I can't get that stock. We got a delay, or I'm going to change this out because of something somewhere else. I mean, we've had this in many other projects where we had to deal with reality. At this point, we're looking to get approval on a landscape drawing. I mean, certainly the list of stock is voluminous and we love it, but we still want to know where the stuff is, basically. So however you handle it, we still want to know where all that stuff is going in.
And Matt, I don't have a April 8th. I don't know, was it presented here at the last hearing? I've been trying to save all the plans myself, and I have a landscape plan from November 2021 on my local drive.
No,
Yeah.
I have, this was,
I'm asking Matt, Jim, I'm asking Matt. He said he had one April 8th, but I don't
Yeah,
remember.
we submitted a set of a few drawings to Gail on April 8th.
But was it a complete update of the landscape plan and the 15 pages, 8 pages that I'm looking at from November?
Yep, it's an 8-page set.
Okay, maybe I just didn't save it locally for some reason.
Did I
Okay.
send that to the board? Did I send that to the board, Matt? Is that the one that you had sent to
believe-
Gail and then I might have sent to the board?
I think that's right.
Yeah,
All right, we'll double check. All right.
okay.
The homework assignment is just, let's make sure we got all the latest plans. They're all up to date. They're all consistent. You know, if there's an elevation that's shown on one of the plans, it should show the plants that are going to be in front of that building, right? That whole thing. We've dealt with that before, and, you know, we want to make sure that they all tie together. Because you run into inconsistencies later, and then it's, well, which one was the right one? Which one was the real plan, right? The intended one. So as best as we can, let's get the final. We're looking at site, architectural, landscape, right? Materials, sounds like we're gonna update materials to get the garage. And I'm not sure what else. Materials, lamp. In terms of plans, yeah, we've got all traffic studies and drainage studies and all that other stuff, but it's more about the plans that represent what the team is planning to put forth as the final, potentially final set, right?
Mhm.
All right, cool.
Yep.
All right. Anything else, board members?
The other piece to that, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if this is the right time to mention or not, is also an update and an accurate O&M plan.
Yep.
You know, one that's reconciled to that, you know, has all the different alarms, has all the different usages, has, you know,
Yep.
whatever conditions and deals there are, that, you know, that's also part of the O&M plan. And
Yep. Okay.
And the other piece that, you know, we often ask for a construction plan. And we have gone we've talked about, you know, what use does that actually have? In this case, I think what would be so important, not so much a construction plan, but a phasing plan. What are they planning to do in kind of ballparks as to when, you know, what are they, you know, you tear down the building and then which building is going to be built first and which building is going to be second, and when does leasing begin, and when does, you know, when are they going to be looking for occupancy permits to what buildings? Because I can't imagine they're going to want to open everything up at once. So more than a construction plan, a phasing plan is what I think could be very helpful. And then also have a condition to make sure that they do a pre-construction meeting with all town officials, police, fire, you know, a get up and get going plan so that the people that care at DPW, Joe Conway, Chief Scory, all, you know, they know what's happening with trucking. They know what's happening with truck tire washing stations. They know what's happening with all kind of that construction conditions, I guess I would call it. I just think for a project this size, it's very important to make sure that everybody's on the same page, reading the same handbook.
Okay,
So,
thank
so
you.
I would have a condition as to that as well.
Brian, does that phased plan sound reasonable? Is that something you think the team can pull together? Matt?
Yeah, I think we can put something like that together.
Okay, great. Okay, anything else, board members?
Yeah.
I do have one last thing. Since I've been beating the band on amenities and, how does this all work? And where does somebody get a cup of coffee when they're waiting for the shuttle? And, we still need to get our hands wrapped around it. And I guess I would, if it's appropriate, I could, have an offline meeting with Matt and just really not to take up hours or whatever at this time, but to really understand how this whole place works and where they're going to be vending machines and what type of vending machines, and are they open to the public? Are they not open to the public? What's their hope for the restaurant? I know Greg's been.
Yeah, Chip, I mean,
as well.
I would say that needs to be more than just an offline meeting with you. I mean, I think last we heard it was a super duper nice vending machine in the middle there, and we said, we don't want that. Give us more information. And every time we've asked for it, it's been, oh, we're still thinking about it. So we haven't heard anything other than a vending machine.
I thought that's what they were gonna present here tonight. I kind of blown away it wasn't.
We seem to be getting into the nitty gritty details when we haven't. It's been over a month since we've talked about that.
Okay, Brian, Matt, can we cover that next time?
Yeah, I mean, if you want, I think it'd be helpful if one of the limitations we have is we can't do fast food here. It's not allowed in a limited business district. So there've been discussions on a coffee shop or something like that. Plus you got Honeydew right around the corner that, we're trying to help businesses not take their business. So but we can't do a coffee shop anyways, because it would be it's classified as fast food, which isn't allowed. So you can't even give a variance for that. It's just not allowed. It will be a use variance. So there are some limitations. We do hear you. We have heard you. We struggled with it. And not for lack of desire to satisfy as we have with I think every aspect of this. So, it might be helpful, Mr. Chair, if you did appoint one or two board members to work with us and try to, to figure it out, if you will.
I'm happy to do that if either Greg or Chip want to work with you offline, just to discuss the details. I think they both understand what the board's trying to get to. I'm not sure there's any question on the restaurant itself. If you're going to bring in a legitimate, company to run a nice restaurant that serves, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or whatever the case might be, and that's fine. I'm not sure we're questioning that, and that you may not know who that is yet and what type of establishment it might be. We understand that. Same with Foundry and some of the others that have that component. I think it's more about those other amenities and the details. So, and I know we covered them once, and there were some questions about it. And I to their point, I think we need to circle back on it and just make sure the board is comfortable with where that's going to end up potentially. So Greg or Chip, do one of you, I mean, if both of you do it, then it's got to be a public notice hearing, right? Because now it's a subcommittee. But if one of you want to take it, and maybe you could talk offline and make sure one of you has all the
Two
comments.
does, two has to be,
Yep.
But that's not, I thought 3 was.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, you did that on Crescent Street. I mean, there's nothing wrong with to have it, with 2 members with a public, a Zoom that, that you handle it, but the public is in too. I mean, that's fine.
And it honestly probably wouldn't be a long meeting either.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it will be.
Okay, maybe I defer to Chip then.
Well, no, Greg, I still just want to understand how it works
and how it all comes together, plays together, rather than just a nice.
So I would suggest both of you jump into this. We notice a public hearing, and then when you've hopefully worked it out, hopefully in one hearing, however long it takes, you bring it back to the subsequent meeting here for the full board to hear.
Correct.
But then the details get worked in 2-3 hours, and if you need a couple meetings, need a couple meetings. And then we don't do it all here, we just see the summary and make sure everyone's comfortable with it. Okay,
Works for me.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I would welcome both of those board members. I mean, they seem to be, I mean, everybody's concerned, but they're passionate about this, and I think it will be a good group.
I need
And
to
I'm
get
happy
out
to
of my
defer to
house,
them on that.
Brian.
yeah, I'm happy to defer to them.
You need to get out of your house, Greg, is that what you said?
Yeah, I mean, 3 kids under 5, so.
All right, well, again, everyone's got different schedules, so why don't we just agree to
Yeah.
take this one offline, Brian?
We
you-
could-
send-
Mr. Chair, that could be either Zoom or it could be in person at this point, right? Is that, it will be, it's obviously open to the public, but it could be a town hall or a Zoom or,
I don't know. Are we
Okay.
allowed to do that?
I'll check with town council
Okay.
before Gail notices it. But you guys
Okay.
might want to do Zoom anyways. It might be easier. It's up to you.
Depending on the timing, if it's at night, I can go wherever.
Okay,
Me too.
okay.
All right. Sounds good. Anything else, board members? Got a growing punch list here of updating the architecturals. Let's see, yeah, garage material. Maybe circle back on conditions, final plans, phasing, construction plan, amenities, subcommittee on that. Okay.
So,
Brian, you got
Mr.
all-
Chairman, just one last thought. If we do all of this at the next meeting, would it be unreasonable to think that we could, if things got wrapped up and we were comfortable in the next meeting, that we would be voting in 2 meetings?
I think 2 meetings is reasonable because I have a feeling there's a lot of material to cover. There could be a couple loose ends, but potentially the meeting after that.
That's my thought.
Yep.
I kind of have time to put the bow around this thing.
Yeah. Well, I was going to go to that next, just briefly, Brian, just and board members for everyone to hear, because we opened this actually a year ago, 4/28 of 2021. And there's been a few absence and members have, caught up. But for the record, right now, Brian, I've got myself, Jim, and Chip. Chip, you missed one in February, but you've caught up and signed an affidavit. Joe has missed one and caught up, signed an affidavit. And Tom has been here for every meeting. Greg, were you here on March 23rd? I don't have you checked. Was that one that you did miss? Because you missed one last year, and if you missed that one in March, I didn't check your name. Then that
Yeah,
would be 2.
yeah, and unfortunately, I think that's one where nothing was talked about, but it was a meeting, so.
Yeah. And Michael, you've missed a couple. So, and Amy's obviously missed a couple.
I signed for March 23rd today, so.
Right, it's just, but there were a couple earlier last year that I don't have you checked. So I think the 5 members right now are myself, Jim, Chip, Joe, and Tom
Yep,
on this
that-
application.
That's what my record keeping shows too, Mr. Chair.
Okay, good. Just glad to be
Yeah.
consistent and just level
Yep.
set because we've been at it for a while.
Yep.
And everyone is aware. Okay. In terms of other new material, I just, for the record, want to note that we got a large envelope today, I think Gail said, maybe yesterday, from Dennis Clardy. Apparently sent a lot of correspondence to the Concom, our board, about drainage report and maybe the results or conclusions of the report and calling into question some things here. So, I mean, it's a really voluminous set of material. Not going to go into it, but I just want to know for the record, and if Mr. Clardy, I think I saw him on earlier, is here. We do have it. I'm not sure if Brian, you might have an opportunity to just look at, there's a cover letter and then some material behind it. If you think there's something to this before we did potentially put a bow on this. But again, he's reached out to our board as well as Concom here. That memo looks like it's from February. So I think we just need to make sure there's nothing here that could be a red flag. Okay,
Yes,
it'll be in the file.
okay, thank you.
Mhm. All right, with that, I think we've gone through everything that we planned to this evening, so I will open it up to public testimony. If you have a comment or question, please raise your hand. And the first hand I see has been up for a while is Chris. If you can just state your name and address for the record, please.
I think that's my client, Chris Diedick, who might have raised his hand by mistake.
Oh. okay,
Yeah,
well,
I think I clicked like a space bar or something, and
Oh,
it raised my hand on accident. Sorry about that.
no worries.
I think he wanted to speak in favor of the project, right, Chris?
Oh yeah, I think it's great. I love it.
I'm only joshing. Go ahead, Mr. Chair. Sorry.
All right, so the next hand is, I see Dennis Clardy. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, thank you for having me, David. And if I could share my screen? Is that
One
possible?
second. As I said, can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Oh, yes, it's Dennis Clardy, 1 Harvest Road, Wakefield.
Yeah. What are you planning to share, Mr. Clardy?
The existing site conditions. It's from the drainage report.
Okay,
Do you see that?
we
Is
do.
it- You do, okay. I call your attention to the second paragraph. It says all runoff from the site was analyzed at 3 study points. Study point 1 is a summation of all runoff towards the existing culvert to the south connecting to the lake. Now, I don't believe that's a true statement because Mike Collins, when I was on the Quantum Power Study Committee, gave us this map, and it showed that the outside on the lakeside was, he said it was 187.54. On the inside culvert, it was 185.46. Now, water doesn't flow uphill, and that means the water is going this way. And here is Richard Hartley from the Fish and Wildlife, Massachusetts. And he says that if I call your attention to, there are over 20 pipes leading into the lake. Walker's Brook is no longer entering the lake. And there's elevated lake levels. And here's a picture of the so-called outlet, which is that shows the land above the culvert. And here is a picture of Mass DOT, show the water flowing towards the Reading drainage canal. You see the direction, the arrows there?
Yeah.
And here is Camp Dresser and McKee did a study for the town of Wakefield. And they listed, it shows the main outlet at the Saugus River, it's on Lowell Street. And they said this was a secondary outlet, number 4. And I live in the old fairgrounds. And my property is connected to the lake by an underground pipe. And my concern is that if the Quantum Power Parkway is elevated, then that water will drain towards my house. And if I could show you there's an intermittent stream that flows by my house. That's my back porch. It goes down here and it goes under the highway. Before, this is the Wakefield Reading Fairgrounds subdivision. This is taken up. And this is a map from 1911. and it shows the intermittent stream that connects to my property. And the water is now coming from this development, this planned development, is coming up the Mass dot drainage ditch. And it's getting very close to my property. And here is the end of the property. This is where the drainage pipe comes out, and the water gets higher and higher. And I'm afraid that that water is going to come onto, if the land is elevated, that the water has no place else to go but into that drainage pipe and onto my property. So if there could be a solution found to the drainage problem, I'd very much appreciate that. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else? Seeing no other hands, we'll close with the public testimony for the evening. So Brian, 2 weeks, May 11th. You'll have to come off mute.
Sorry,
Brian?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Yes, that's fine. And the board was agreeable with conservation if they decided to close it out, that your board didn't have any problem with that.
Board members, I didn't have any problem. I sorry, we kind of went sideways. I should have tried to close
Yeah,
this first.
no, I don't think if they shifted that line a little bit, it's not gonna change buildings or anything else in the roadway. I think that's fine.
Thank you.
All right,
Mhm.
okay.
Dave, are we gonna ask the group to address Mr. Clardy's concerns?
We're happy to, if that's of interest.
Yeah, I mean, I would, again, there's a lot of material here behind what he showed. If you want to do that and maybe give an update at the next hearing, I think that's reasonable. Again, there's a lot of material here. Want to give you an opportunity.
I mean, it would have been nice to have done it a year ago when we were talking about site and drainage, but rather get it right, make sure we don't cause any problems.
Well, I mean, Matt, you can address it in general, right? I mean,
Yeah, sure. I mean, I actually have this booklet on my desk right now. We received it regarding the Conservation Commission process a few months ago. I've met with Dennis. We've walked the site in these different areas that we were talking about. Yeah, I think in terms of the general design of how the highway was put in and the general history of the area have contributed to some of the problems that Dennis is addressing here. Generally speaking, we are dramatically increasing the amount of flood storage on our property versus the existing conditions. And what we, if approved and when developed, what we're proposing for the site, one, will dramatically increase flood storage and should have a pretty much a tangible impact on decreasing the amount of flooding that is experienced in areas like Dennis's property. We've gone in our different Conservation Commission hearings, we've discussed this and we actually commissioned a bunch of work, spent a bunch of money to try to look at this issue and look at this history. We're happy to share any of that information with the board as well. Generally speaking, not generally speaking, I would say conclusively that what we're proposing here is an improvement over the existing conditions from a flood perspective.
Yeah, and Dennis has consistently been at the Conservation Commission on this issue. He was there last meeting. So it's an issue that has been presented to them.
So that answers my question, that there's been a lot of looking at it and a lot of understanding it and a lot of, that's great. I'm all set with it then, frankly, Mr. Chair.
Ready for a motion to continue then?
I move that we continue this hearing to May 11th.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, Chip,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes,
Tom,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, thanks for the updates tonight. And we'll talk in a couple of weeks and look forward to hearing about an announcement about the subcommittee. All right, thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so Brian, we're going to continue on to your next hearing, which is a new hearing, right?
Yes.
22-52, 53, 54, and 55. Mariah Energy Corp. at 356 Lowell Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Attorney Brian McGrail representing Naraya at the property situated at 356 Lowell Street. With me tonight, I'm looking on the screen, I know somewhere, is Michael Durant. Mike is the project in charge of the project for Naraya. Mike, are you here somewhere that you can put your camera on and say hello to the board?
I think Mike's been having some technical issues.
Okay, no problem. So Michael is here on behalf of Naraya. Oh, there you are. He's having some technical, that's okay. So
Okay.
Mike, I'm sure you'll hear from Mike as we proceed. You just heard from Chris Tamula, who is here. He is with Greenman Peterson GPI. He is our site civil engineer. Heather Monacup is here also. She's with GPI, and she's our traffic consultant. And John Sully is here, who is our architect. We'd like to, our goal tonight is to put on, as usually happens with these projects, a kind of a look at this from 10,000 feet with not a lot of detail, which I'm sure that we will get into. We are scheduled to appear before the Traffic Advisory Committee on Friday, so we will be before them. And I think we recently received a number of memorandums. Thank you, Gail, from various town departments, and we will be addressing those as in due course once we have a chance to review the comments. What we are proposing, and I think maybe to share my screen to just kind of familiarize everybody with this. This is the property at 356 Lowell Street, which abuts the Doyle School, is at the intersection where Melithab is. Business offices are here, condominiums. We have FNA transmission across the street. I think it's the greenhouse is here, and then the school property and heading toward Linfield.
Right, that's not the Doyle, that's the Dolbear.
Oh, did I say Doyle? I meant Dolbear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Joe. Yeah, the Dolbear School. Appreciate that correction.
Yeah.
Our goal is, we had filed, as you know, back in October, and we withdrew that application. Our initial application was to improve the property, upgrade it. It's in drastic need of renovation and upgrade. When you look at the condition of it, it's basically almost all pavement with no landscaping, uncovered pumps, service, just not in a good state. So we had applied in October to commence this renovation project, and that filing in October entailed upgrading the gasoline to replace these pumps with modern pumps, to get rid of 3 and put in 6 pumping stations total, or pumping units, with a canopy to protect the folks that are filling up, and also to provide proper safety to today's standards with fire mitigation and repellents, et cetera. And so that was one aspect of what we filed for in October. We also filed for the retail convenient type store that we want to put here, and coffee service or a coffee shop in conjunction with that, which is, I think you're very familiar. It's pretty much a standard in the industry now that you see everywhere on gasoline stations you go. And that plan also called for a drive-up window. And we filed for that. And as we were getting near the hearing and we looked at the site, Naria made a decision that they wanted to pull back and they want to look at it clearer. And they decided to forego the drive up and get rid of it. They just thought it would be better for the site, better for the area not to have that component. So the plan that has now been put before you does not have a drive up component, and you'll see the detail on that tonight as we go through it. I do want to say the drive up worked, it queued right. But they just kind of thought there was, for them, there was too much going on. It would be a better project without it. It's important, I think, to note that this property was actually before the zoning board back in 2001. And I permitted it. And at that point, it was permitted for basically exactly what we're doing tonight. And it was permitted with a drive-through. So it was approved. But then things with the economy changed and it was never built or put into play. So, so this has been permitted by your board for virtually exactly what we're looking to do. Plus it had a drive-through at that point. As you come around the corner, you'll see, and Chris will get an idea on the curb cuts, but you have a couple of curb cuts here that we're planning on keeping. There are curb cuts. And this is, I think, and Heather will talk a little bit about this, and I'm sure you'll hear from the traffic advisory on this. But as you come through this intersection, and I think a big benefit of this is when you head up Lowell Street where the school is, there's currently 2 curb cuts here. And we are going to eliminate those. Eliminate one of them and make just 1 curb cut that will work better with the school traffic. It'll be more appropriate, and you'll hear some on that. So with that said, Chris, could you bring up the existing conditions plan for me and I'm going to kind of keep going a little bit and probably hand it over to you.
All set.
Thank you. So this is the existing conditions plan, and you kind of saw from the videos from the screen that I had up before that it's really kind of a barren site. It's really just pavement. There's some grass area back here that's just kind of scrub, and then there's a little bit up front. And as I mentioned, there's 2 curb cuts on the Lowell Street side. If you could point to those. That's the 2 on the Lowell Street side, Chris, near the school, the other side. Yep, thank you. And we're going to get rid of one of those. And you can see on the corner where the parking encroaches, it goes over the property line. The way it is, it's been like that for years. So up front is kind of like, we looked at this as like really unique landscaping opportunities. You'll see from our plans as Chris gets into it, that land between that red line that Chris just drew and our sidewalk is town-owned land. And what we would like to do is we would like to landscape it and irrigate it. I think it could really beautify the area because right now it's just barren and just not too good looking. And we want to put a pretty good planting plan together that will, I think, really be a highlight for the neighborhood. So this gives you an idea. Chris, is there a way to do the plan that has both? Is that possible, or is that I'm asking too much of you? Great. So this kind of shows you that we want to try to get as much landscaping as we can. We're really improving the landscaping, putting good grass buffer on the perimeter of the property, some shrubs on the other side over there where there's really nothing and just scrub trees. And then really fix up along Vernon Street. And as I've mentioned, kind of a significant planting area on the front of the property. And you can kind of see the new layout. There'll be a new building. And then the pumps are more properly aligned compared to the way they are today. And I think this might be a good opportunity, Chris, if I didn't take too much away from you, if you want to kind of hop in and maybe give an idea of the layout and the parking, et cetera, that might be great.
Sure, thanks, Brian. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Chris Tamula. I'm a senior project manager at Greenman Peterson with our office located up at 44 Stiles Road in Salem, New Hampshire. So yeah, thanks, Brian, for doing a quick little overview. So what I'd like to try to do is just really focus more on the proposed plan and not the existing. So what we are looking to do is raise the existing site. So the existing building, gas, fuel islands, et cetera, everything will be removed. The only thing that'll remain as part of this development are the 3 existing 12,000 gallon fuel tanks. The fuel tanks were installed around 2018. They're 12,000 gallon each, so a total of 36,000 gallons of fuel storage is currently existing on site. The only change to that will be we'll be adding another 5,000 gallon fuel tank, so there'd be a total of 41,000 gallons of fuel on site. So with the 5,000 square foot convenience store and walk-up donut shop, we have a new fueling canopy with 6 fuel islands, 12 fueling positions. As part of this development, what we are looking to do is to provide diesel at this facility. It's not diesel for your, your tractor trailers. It's just diesel for more like your small vehicles, your Volkswagen clean diesel, that type of thing. So right now the current plan shows that all 6 islands will have diesel. They'll all have super, regular, mid-grade, and diesel. The island that's shown here will have all those same features. It'll also have a new E85 at this pump here. So that's part of the reason that we have this new 5,000 gallon tank. As Brian mentioned, the two curb cuts on Vernon Street will remain. And we are removing the first curb cut that's located close to the intersection here. And we provide a new 30-foot wide full access curb cut further from the intersection. Overall, we'll have anywhere from 24 to 30-foot wide drive aisles. We'll have 18 striped parking spaces with all the parking spaces against the building protected with bollards. Obviously, as you can see, the green is the landscaping that's all around the perimeter. We have a fenced dumpster enclosure here, which is also screened by some landscaping. We have some low growth plantings along the sides of the lot, up the top on the side. As Brian mentioned, this is the landscape area that we're showing within the town right of way area. Overall, we feel that it's a significant upgrade to what's out there today. We obviously have a full set of plans, everything from a demo plan through details, erosion controls, full stormwater management. I don't think we want to get into all that this evening. I just want to kind of give the high level picture of the development. In addition, there is a chain link fence that runs along the back in the side here. We are removing that chain link fence and providing a new 6-foot high stockade fence. So it's a solid stockade fence. There are existing freestanding signs located here and here. Those would also remain, but they would just be refaced with the new Naria brand image. And then, like I said, altogether, we feel it's a significant upgrade to what's out there today. With that, I can hand it back to Brian, and we can discuss traffic with Heather, and John Selly's here for to discuss architecture as well.
Yep. Well, thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. And I think I'm gonna go to Heather. And Heather, maybe we're gonna be a traffic advisory, which I think you'll be more of a day for you. But maybe you can just kind of, if you would, talk to the board about your initial thoughts on traffic, what your study shows. If you would also talk to them how you've worked with the MBTA on their new stops and how we've worked with the town engineer to coordinate everything that we're doing on this site to make sure that everything that the MBTA has planned, because they have some changes that we've worked hand in hand with them to make sure we're in sync. If you would touch on that, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the record, Heather Monacup with Greenman Peterson as well, also the traffic engineers for the project. So when we started this project, we had a meeting with the town and also with VHB, the peer review consultant. So the scope of the traffic impact study that was submitted, it is dated March 21st, submitted with the whole package. It was set on a scope set with the town and the peer review consultant. So we followed everything that they wanted us to see from existing conditions, which included some observations at the elementary school because it was so close. We looked at a litany of things. We did traffic counts and code adjustments, seasonal adjustments, looked at collisions, things like that. We also went into future conditions, 2028. And as Brian had mentioned, we not only looked at normal things like traffic growth and things like that, but we looked at any background developments in the area, made sure those were included in our traffic volumes. But as Brian mentioned, there is a nearby MBTA project to upgrade the bus stops down Vernon Street. But with that came some updates, or will be coming updates to the pedestrian ramps on each of the corners, as well as the pedestrian timing. So we worked with the design consultant on that, talked to them before with our first filing back, as Brian had mentioned a while back, and then updated the information in the traffic study with this new submission. That project isn't going as fast as they had hoped, but it is still on the burner today for finalizing the plans, hopefully this year. So we did coordinate with them. We incorporated any changes that they made to the traffic signal as part of our no build conditions. So we have a good comparison of what this site and the area and how the intersection operates without any change to this development and other things happening, as well as a comparison under the build condition with this redevelopment project in place. So we looked at trip generation and traffic increases and things like that and analyzed the intersections. Overall, it's a gas station to a gas station. There is some increase in trips, this type of development carries a lot of pass-by trips, which are trips that are already on the roadway, and now they'll just kind of come into the site and keep going on their way. So it doesn't bring a lot of new traffic to the area, but that's all taken, all in our traffic study. It is being reviewed by VHB. I did reach out to them for an update. I did not get one, but they are aware that we have the ZBA hearing tonight. And as Brian mentioned, we will be in front of the TAC on Friday, the 29th. So we will have more information after that and hopefully comments from VHB soon after.
Great. Thank you, Heather. So John, do you want to touch on the building, if you would? Is that something you can do, please?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Thanks, Brian. I'm John Selly, associate with Phase Zero Design. We're the architects for the project. Chris, do you have the architectural drawings in this package that you have on the screen? If so, if you just want to maybe flip to the floor plan first, and I'll give the board a quick overview of what the interior of the building looks like. Okay, so we have the floor plan on the screen here. It's fairly straightforward. As a convenience store, you walk in the front door, which is on the sort of plan south here. Yes. So you walk into the main retail portion of the convenience store. You see the gondola shelving straight ahead of you. Walk-in coolers behind those shelving to fill out the back of the retail area. To your right-hand side on the entry, you see the cashiers. So the cashiers have a great view out these large storefront windows with surveillance over the fueling area. Behind the cashier, you have public restrooms. Back behind the cashier, down the hallway, also a small office janitor closet for the retail operation. Back right-hand corner of the store, we have a utility space. And then over to the left-hand side of the plan, as Brian mentioned in the overview, we do have a co-brand tenant that will fill out that space. Not determined yet whether that might be a coffee or a sandwich deli or something like that. That's still to be determined. So we haven't got that quite figured out yet, but there will be a co-brand within the space that will provide an offering in addition to the typical convenience store, retail, and fueling operation. Okay, so that's the basics of the floor plan layout. Chris, if you want to go to the next page, we can take a look at the building exteriors. So at the top of the screen here, we have a 3D rendering of the building from the fueling sides. You're seeing the main entry accented by the wood look material and the raised height parapet with the Noria logo signage above the branded Noria green trellis canopy element. So again, you can see these large floor to ceiling storefront windows really bringing a lot of light into the store. The whole theme of the Noria convenience store is this very light, open, airy, contemporary take on a convenience store. They're really looking for a fresh, clean, modern approach to the convenience store type. So these large windows, the high ceilings really contribute to that. The materials that are used on the exterior of the building here are high quality, durable, low maintenance materials. What you see on the main facade in the beige sort of block is a Nichiha cementitious panel with a texture and a panel proportion that replicates a sandstone look. On the main entry piece with the higher parapet, the wood look is also a Nichiha material. So again, a cementitious, durable, low maintenance material, but at the entry portion, it's a wood look, a wood replicating material to it. On the sides, sort of flanking the front elevation here, we have some ephes material that runs vertically and gives some relief to the side elevations of the building. Aluminum, again, we have the green aluminum signature Noria trellis that wraps around the left-hand corner. And then above the storefront on the right side, we have an aluminum louver material to provide some relief and some shade and shadow on the elevation as well. If you zoom back out, Chris, just to give a sense of the drawing here. So we have the front elevation here in the middle, and below that, one of the side elevations. Next page. So look at the front a little bit from the left-hand side here. You can see that trellis wrapping around the corner. The sandstone Nichiha panels wrap the front of the building. They wrap around the side and the rear of the building as well. So the back side of the building, which is shown on the bottom elevation on the sheet, is the same material as the front of the building. It is back of house, so of course we don't have storefront, but no change in materials there. Okay, so that's an overview on the building. Next page, I'll give you a sense of what the fueling canopy is going to look like, or proposed to look like. So the Noria branding here on the canopy, it's a two-tone, the Noria blue at the top of the canopy with a white stripe below that, and in between those, it's the Noria branded green. There's an illuminated green accent band that runs around the canopy, and we have these Noria logos on either end of the canopy, facing traffic as it comes from either direction. In this view, you can also see the freestanding sign in the distance there on the right-hand side. As Chris mentioned, there are existing signs at the two locations that we're proposing to reuse the existing sign structure and simply reface those signs with the new Noria branded signage. Okay. The next page that we have in the set details the proposed signage for the project. So we have the two freestanding signs, again, maintaining the existing structure, but reskinning those, updating the fueling price signage on those. In addition to that, we have on the building, we have the building sign sort of front and center over the entry, which is the Noria logo. We have two smaller signs on the building itself on the sort of the front elevation here, Chris, on the left side of the front elevation, that we have a sign, an occupancy sign for the tenant on that face, as well as the turning the corner from that sign on the left side. Yep, another tenant sign there for, again, for that co-brand offering that will be within the store. And then signage, the logos as mentioned on the canopy itself, two of those Noria logos, one on either end. And that's the basic overview of the building, canopy, and signage. Happy to answer any questions that folks might have.
I have a question. Who's Noria?
Great question. Mike, are you on the call? Would you like to answer that, or I'm happy to
And do
fill
you
in if
have
you're
any
still having
stations?
technical.
I've never seen a station.
Chip, there's one
The-
on Topsfield Fair, if you're going on the way to Topsfield Fair. Ipswich.
Probably
Topsfield.
their most notable location right now is. Sorry, Mike, I'll keep going. The new convenience store gas station at Logan Airport is a Noria convenience store. They were selected by Massport to develop on that location, and so that really has become their flagship location. But they have stores throughout Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine. Mike, you'll be able to tell us better. How many locations? 60 plus locations at this point throughout New England?
There's over 165 locations, which are a combination of our Noria convenience store gas stations and Golden Nozzle car washes.
Okay. So
Dave?
a couple general comments that I would make. One is we've never allowed diesel anywhere in any of our gas stations that we've approved before. So I'll be curious to see what traffic advisory has to say about that. Two is there is another competitor that tried to have a glowing band around their kiosk as well, and that didn't happen because it looked like a UFO about to take off. Just kind of general comments there. And two, this reminds me kind of layout wise of the Cumberland Farms we just approved. Not just approved, but that went in a number of years ago down by the head of the lake. It has that almost same exact feel. One of the things where Brian was mentioning the landscaping in front, it's great to come in with that idea. I'd be looking for what the commitment's going to be. I mean, right down the road, you actually have a great example of who does a super job with it is Prime, shockingly to me. But maybe there's a chance for some sort of height or stone wall or something in this front corner that could differentiate this than just a big open parking lot. Two is the reason I mentioned Cumberland Farms is you have a lot of cooling apparatus either going to be in the back of the building or up on the roof, and you are spitting distance to a school. So I'd want to see all the specs on all your cooling equipment and noise, what you're going to do to dissipate the noise, because obviously it can't be noisy next to a school. So those are my initial thoughts.
Thanks, Chip. And who else was?
Dave, I was about to say something. Dave,
Go for it.
I
go
was
on.
going to say something about the cooling stuff too, but the other thing was, especially if they go into traffic on Friday, I wonder if they need both curb cuts on Vernon Street. If we could close up one of those. I know that might involve moving some other things moving on the site plan, but I think the less curb cuts, the better. And that one that's closest to the intersection particularly is the one I would look to close, and it would provide more opportunity for landscaping as well. So there's that. And then the other comment I had is that the facade on the building for the Lowell Street side is quite visible, and it seems quite plain and not a lot there. So I wonder if they could look at that and make it a little bit more interesting too.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
So Brian, when you go to traffic on Friday, can you ask about, yeah, I'm sure they're gonna look at the distances between the entrance and exits of that and the intersection anyway. Can you talk to them about the need for that curb cut?
Yep. We'll make sure that gets mentioned, Mr. Lucy.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Dave, Mike Feely, my issue would be the proximity to the school and the availability of diesel. I guess I don't have a good handle on the no trucks, but just normal cars that have diesel. I mean, are there a lot of them? Is there going to be something there that says you can't have a truck? If I'm a truck and I need gas and I need diesel, I'm going to go to a place that has diesel. I mean, is there height limits, signage, anything like that? That's all.
Mm-hmm.
The less trucks there in that area near the school, the better.
Okay, agreed. Thank you, Mike. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a comment. Well, a couple. Real quick on the diesel. Do they have diesel there now? I think they do, right?
I don't think any stations in Wakefield have diesel.
Mike.
I thought they already sold diesel. Or maybe I'm wrong. I was just there.
Mike can answer that. Go ahead, Mike.
Mike Durant with Noria here. That site currently does not offer diesel.
All right. So if it did, I would say I would understand why you would keep it, but if it doesn't, then I mean I agree with the board. Then you shouldn't add something to it that doesn't already have. But that's just my thought on that. On Tom's point, I'm not a big fan of that cinder block look. It looks to me just like a cinder block building. Maybe it's just a bad elevation view, but I mean, you made mention it's panels, but I wrote down when I saw it on a piece of paper, cinder blocks. Looks to me like just a couple cinder blocks thrown together. So maybe take a look at that. Also, the transformer right there on Lowell Street seems like it's a little too close to the street. And I don't know if Jim was going to point that out, but maybe see if you can get that thrown out someplace in the back or further away from Lowell Street. And I don't know if this is something that you guys can do. If it's also put the charging stations. Are anybody doing that at gas stations? Do you know of? Is that something that takes too long to charge at a gas station unless it's a supercharge? I don't know if you looked into that.
Mike, can you address that?
Maybe get rid of the diesel and add that. I don't know.
Yes, we've looked at trying to add EV charging to this site. Based off of the requirements, it's not able to fit on this site and still comply with all of the requirements for the redevelopment.
Okay, what's that, a power issue? Like a bigger transformer wise?
No, there are certain requirements for spacing and distance from petroleum systems to have a EV charging unit on a site. This particular site just simply isn't big enough to install EV charging units.
And by the way, Noria, they like to do that. So it's not like that, you know, that's something that they really vetted and tried to figure out. That's a benefit to them to be able to do that, because when people are charging their cars, they use the store.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so I don't want you to have the impression at all, you know, it's convenient, you can't do it. No, they look for the ability to do that. They would like to do that.
Okay. Appreciate you looking into that. And I'm also excited to hear about the E85. That's big because I don't know too many stations. I think there's only a few thousand in the country that are doing that right now. So just a quick comment on that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Brian, just a quick question. I know we'll get into it, but just one of the applications was around parking and loading. Is that speaking more to buffer strips and distance to lot lines, or is it based on the parking calculations for the use?
It's based on the mainly on the setbacks from the building. So, yeah, mainly the buffer issues.
Okay,
And I think, Chris, can you go to the parking chart? Let's see, yeah. You know, and this is kind of for the board to do it. I mean, you know, it's really interesting. So we're showing that basically 20 spaces are required. We're referencing that we have 30. We're including the 12 spaces at the dispensers, and you know, and I think the court can do the board can determine that that meets that requirement, because you know what the studies show is if somebody's going to, you know, wants to go to the store and they're getting gas, they're not gonna leave their pumping station to go park somewhere else to then go in the store. Everybody fills up or goes in before they fill up and they take their space. So, but if you didn't determine that was adequate, which I think it should be, then we, you know, part of our special permit would to be reduced requirement by 2 spaces. Because we have 18 regular stripe spaces, 20 required.
currently there are 23 stripe bases. Okay. Okay. So for the board to determine potentially whether we would count them or not, or whether it meets satisfies the requirement. Okay. All right. We did receive correspondence. While other board members may think of other things just initially. So there was a letter from GLD speaking specifically about those level 3 DC chargers, asking whether they would be considering it. So that was from David Paulson. I don't know, Brian, if you've seen these correspondence.
Gail was kind enough to forward those to me, so we just got them recently though. So
okay. And then from the town engineer, there's a bunch of comments. Obviously, there's several pages for you to go through and see if there's things we need to account for in the plans or make adjustments. Concom had some comments, even though it's not under their jurisdiction. They had some thoughts and recommendations and concerns. So again, would welcome your thoughts on any of that if we need to account for it. And lastly, we heard, did you get this one as well from an abutter across the street?
no.
Ann Martin, I think she either, I don't know if she leases or owns, office is located directly across the street. And again, this speaks to the school and a number of parents who tend to use that parking space area for school pickup and drop off, or mainly pickup, I imagine. And some of that overflow extends to across the street, and concerned about, okay, if we were to grant relief and fewer spaces, now that's just going to make that problem worse potentially. So she wrote a letter. I would just ask you to take a look at it. Something for the board to consider. We understand the way the site is used today. When our kids were young, I remember they sent emails and said, look, we got to stop parking in the gas station, right? The guy's been nice enough, but you got to stop it, right? And it forces everyone to just find a spot somewhere on Lowell or Vernon Street. But unfortunately, some people, you know, go to the other surrounding properties, and even if they're not supposed to, they do. And so I don't know if it's just a level of enforcement. Interested to see what TAC might think in terms of the amount of parking up and down the street. But again, it's more for the school, not so much for this site. You know, but it is right there. It is part of this environment. It is an abutter, and it's a big abutter with a lot of traffic. So I imagine it's part of the study. We just got to understand it. So maybe we circle back on this one after the TAC has an opportunity to look at this. So I just want to call that out. Those are the correspondence we've received to date.
Thank you.
And my only comments, I think, echoed the others. So at this time, at least at a high level, not much to add beyond what others have already said. But again, we're going to get into the details in subsequent hearings. So
this is Greg.
Yes, Greg.
I just had something based off of the parking thing. Just one thing to think about, and maybe Brian could do some more thinking or even research about it. I think from what I understood when you were talking about keeping the spaces at the gas pumps in the count, the parking count, is that, you know, we'll expect people to not expect, but understand that people will go into the store while they are getting their gas pumped. Is that what you're saying? I mean, because I think if you go to every gas station, it says don't leave car unattended. I don't know if we should be, if we do get to that point, endorsing a possible safety problem. I mean, I'm assuming that's for like fire issues. If your car lights if the gas catches fire while you're pumping or spark or something, I don't know. So, I mean, seemingly if you include those in the parking count, you're essentially endorsing some sort of safety issue.
Or they go in and out of the store before they're not filling. They just.
Yeah, no,
don't fill.
understood, but just something to think about. Yeah.
I don't think we would encourage any of that dangerous behavior.
Yeah. I mean, but I know people do that at, go out in and out after they pump at Prime, and it, angers me. It angers me as I'm trying to get in there too, in and out, and there's people parked out in the street. So that's another issue.
Right. This seems to have a little more room than like Cumberland and Prime. Prime's a tight spot. They've been able to be successful there, but yeah, it is a spot. It is a different kind of site. All right. Anything else, board members, at this time?
One final question, because I think all the other ones have been answered, but for me, for the moment, any sort of air station so you can fill your tires or anything like that here?
Chris?
Right now, we are not calling out a location for an air tower, no.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
good comment, Jim. Yeah, we should probably look at that. I know it's probably more for the, well, suggestion is maybe look at it if we can add it somewhere. Okay. Anything else, board members? Okay. So at this time, we'll open up to public testimony again, based on the overview we've heard of this project, the information presented this evening. If you have a comment or question, please raise your hand in the Zoom meeting and I'll call on you in order. And seeing no hands being raised, we'll close out the public testimony for the evening. All right, so Brian, 2 weeks and we'll continue the discussion.
Yes, and I will raise those issues at TAC on Friday, so they make sure that they discuss them and comment on them.
Okay, sounds good. All right, board members.
Dave, I got one more comment just to make on past circumstances where we didn't want to trash the outside of the building with an ice machine, propane sales, or bundles of wood. We've restricted that sort of activity at this point in other places, just so they should know.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Yep. Last call. All right, motion to continue. Don't all shout it out at once.
I'll move to continue to May 11th.
Thank you, Tom.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor? Tom,
Yes.
Jim. Jim, you went on mute, geez.
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Chip,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, so we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks for the introduction tonight, team, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Mhm.
Thank you.
All right, Brian, we have one more, I think that has, that you're representing 22-2950 Emerson Street, a minor modification potentially. So why don't we see if we can get to that one before we.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair, appreciate it.
Mhm.
Chris Diedick is here. This is 50 Emerson Street. And we want to present what we deem would be a minor modification. Let me bring up the plan. Really has to do with the basement layout of this. If you remember, 50 Emerson Street was a 2-family conversion to a 3-family that was approved by the board. And the basement plan for the unit called for an entrance to the unit. This is the front of the property. Chris, are you with me? You here?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Great. Okay, make sure what I present is correct if you would.
Yep.
Because I kind of get confused by these plans. So in any event, this is the front of the house. And the way this basement unit was presented, there was going to be a staircase that was going to come out here to the side of the property. And there's a couple of issues with this. The whole electric connections to the property are here, which are problematic. And the second thing is it kind of, it leads this unit owner, their main entrance out into nowhere land, where there's no lighting or, it's just kind of like an odd place. So what we're requesting to do is to make a modification to that entrance. And someday I'll get good at this.
Pro tip, have everything open on your laptop.
Yeah. Easy for you to say. Okay. So we would like to move that. This is the front staircase of the house. We'd like to move it, as you can see, instead of coming out the side, that it comes out this way and just steps up. So we'd like that unit to be able to come out the front of the property, and that way they're able to use the same walkway. And it just makes sense from a layout, and it also prevents interference with the whole electrical component. Quite honestly, this is the plan that Chris really intended, and somehow when the architect submitted the wrong plan, that had been an earlier version. Yeah, so we're throwing the architect under the bus, but he's not here to defend himself. But in any event, this was really the intention, and we would respectfully suggest that it works better for the unit, has no real visual impact, and we would request it as a minor modification for your consideration.
We have how it works with all the other entrances.
Yeah, I think I can show you something on that, Chip. Hold on. This, obviously these stairs go down, but here's the main entrance.
And that was coming out the side before?
Yeah, Mike. Yep.
Are they changing the driveway from right to left or anything?
No,
Oh,
that's how it was coming out before, Mike. See it? It was
okay.
kind of coming out the side and then going, you'd have to go around and then down and in.
So does that go under the other staircase, Brian?
That's why I asked Chris if he's here. Chris, can you currently Chip or the new one that you're talking about?
The new one?
Chris?
Well, both,
Yeah.
both.
Yep. So the new one comes out under it, like maybe 4 or 5 feet. So the door is basically directly under like the middle of the like primary first and second unit staircase.
I mean, do we have a site plan showing all of this? Like with parking and walkways and fun things like that?
I can, hang on a second.
There was in the decision, basically, a site plan.
Yeah, I'm trying to log on and get it. Take 2 seconds.
But my bet is you're gonna show me a site plan that's not updated with this new front entrance.
No, it's not there.
You looking at it, Jim?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It only shows the front stairs. It doesn't even show the stair wrapping around the corner. So the site plan doesn't show this scheme or the previous scheme. It shows the building, shows the front staircase. It really doesn't show the back staircase either. It's more of an existing conditions site plan.
I'm gonna bring it up right now. Come on.
Oh, yeah, I got a copy too. How did we not get that detail before?
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
That it? Jim, does that match what you have?
Get everybody out of the way here.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. Yeah.
Yep, that's the approved site plan.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we had individual floor plans. We had proposed basement,
Oh,
first
yeah.
floor, second floor, and the basement is the one Brian showed with the thing coming out the side. So it was on that plan. But it just is one of those things where we look for all the plans to kind of tie in and be consistent, and the site plan just has very little detail, right? It just shows the structure basically,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, it's really kind of below ground. So,
When did we approve this?
February, I think, Chip.
Yeah, not long ago. But
Yeah.
February 10th.
I think we're just more focused on the conversion aspects of it, right? Did it meet the requirements for that special permit? And maybe not as much on these stairwells and
Yeah, because he wasn't doing anything to the building, right, from the outside, so.
It doesn't show the deck off the back or the stairway off the back or the new stairway wrapping around the corner.
Well, the floor plans did.
Yes, but the site didn't.
Yeah. Do you want to see more detail?
yeah, I mean, I'm leaning towards getting an updated site plan that shows everything at ground level. Because even the first floor, as Jim said, shows wraparound deck and porch, and if you put that on this plan, now all of that stuff is getting close to the parking area, right? How close, how does it all work? I don't know, board members, do you agree that we really should have an updated site plan that kind of ties in with those and shows the detail? So it all works here.
For history, if nothing else. I mean, you can see, Dave, that it says proposed deck under construction at the back, but it doesn't show anything there. The back of the house on that site plan.
The driveway today is on the right. I didn't see that. I didn't notice that I was gonna move to the left.
We're happy to provide what you want. To deem it necessary.
I mean, just on its face, like moving the stairwell from the side to the front, I have no problem with, right? If it, for the reason stated. I would have no problem finding that as a minor modification. It's just, I'm surprised we let this one kind of get through, board members.
And there's a lot missing in my mind.
Yeah, and I just
I'm
surprised.
trying to figure, I don't remember it, which these days, who knows?
You might have been skiing.
But B, I mean, we don't have, if we were going from a 2 to a 3, I mean, we don't have landscaping, we don't have walkways, we don't have anything, and that's not what's being asked for us tonight. So what we did approve it, we let it go by. So I do believe this is a minor modification of the entrance, but wow, this is not our typical.
Is this the one near you, Mickey, that
Yes.
work had already started or something? There was something.
Yes, they were doing some work there for a while, and there was limited conversations with some neighbors.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, this meeting was in December, actually. We filed the,
Oh, that's what okay.
so this actually goes
That
back.
helps.
Yeah, no, the decision got filed, I think, a few weeks later, as Brian said, but yeah, the meeting for this was a one and done in December. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, it was in Michael's neighborhood.
This is
I don't
bringing
know.
it back a little bit.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like I said, I think it is a minor mod what they're presenting. I just want to ensure that yeah, we're gonna get a new basement plan. And what else do we need updating? Brian, what are you presenting
We
updated?
gave you the new basement plan. I think what you want is you want the site plan to show where those stairs come out. Is that
I just don't know, Mr. Chairman, if we need to have the petitioner spend 3,500 or even try to get a surveyor to update it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah.
You know, what's
normally-
it gonna prove? What's it gonna change?
Yeah. All right,
That's my opinion, but
yeah. No, I'm surprised we let it go, but
I'm shocked.
but it's, what's done is done. As long as they adhere to those plans, the site plan shows the proposed driveway with the parking, and as long as in conjunction with the work that's being done on the rear, there's no conflicts. I just want to make sure you don't have to come back later and say, oh, by the way, the stuff on the back of the building and the parking don't work. We got to reconfigure something, and we're going to lose a space, or we're going to do, you know what I'm saying? Because it does look like there isn't a lot of space in between. I don't know what the scale is here. Maybe it's 15, 30, maybe 30 feet. Maybe there's more than enough. Okay.
Chris, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah. So the deck is already been signed off and approved by the building department. And it's only 12 feet. It's a 12 by 20 deck. And I think the driveway starts at like 20 feet behind the house. So there's still like 8-ish feet or something like that.
Okay.
From back to part of the driveway, and it meets all the specs that, we agreed upon in December. It doesn't alter or take away any parking spaces.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. I'm back to thinking, yeah, what's proposed is a minor mod in my mind, and we can just move forward with it. Anyone else?
It's fine.
Okay, so what's the date of this plan? The updated plan now that shows,
It's right here. This would be the best. It is. March 14, yeah, revision date, last revision date is March 14. On the right-hand side, see it?
yep,
Originally dated January 1, 2022. Final revision date, March 14, 22. Chris, this is the right plan, right? You can see it?
Yep. Yeah.
okay. Okay, anything else, board members? All right, if any member of the public wishes to ask a question or make a comment, please raise your hand in the Zoom meeting at this time. Seeing no hands, we'll close it to public testimony.
I move, based on the information Mr. Chair presented to us this evening, with these plans dated 3/14, that I deem the change in not even location, the change in direction of the front stairs to come out the front of the building should be deemed a minor modification.
Okay,
I'll second that.
Go ahead, Tom.
thank you, Tom. Any discussion on the motion?
Minor modifications approved too, right? Isn't it? You can
What's
deem
that?
it, and you actually approve the minor modification, because you can't, you have to approve it too, right?
Yes, we approve it as a minor modification, yes.
Okay, you just deemed it minor. That was it.
Okay. All right, regular voting members, Chip,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes,
and I vote yes, so that's unanimous, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you,
You're
board
welcome.
members.
Thank you all. I appreciate your time.
All right, thanks for your patience. Have a good night.
Thanks, you as well.
Okay. Brian, have a good night. I think we're all
Jim,
set.
thank you. Thank you very
All right.
much.
All right, moving on to our next continued hearing. 22-39 0 North Ave Wakefield LLC at 596 North Ave. And welcome, Jesse.
Dave, you gotta kick me out.
Oh, that's right. Off the timeout you go.
Let me back for the minutes, I guess.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Good evening to the members of the board.
Good
For
evening,
the
Jesse.
record, my name is Attorney Jesse Schomer of the Law Offices of Rignanti Stereo, representing the applicant tonight, 0 North Ave Wakefield LLC. With me here tonight, Mr. Chair, are representatives from the owner, Dana Lopez, as well as our site civil engineer of record, Chris Barajas of Williams and Barajas, and record architects Peter Sandors and Andrew Jones of Phoenix Architects. If it please the board, I'd like to make just a few brief introductory comments to bring the board members up to speed of updates and status changes since we were last before you 2 weeks ago. And then we would like to proceed with a presentation regarding site civil, stormwater, and wetlands issues by Chris Barajas. Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to give a recap for the members, this is the fourth hearing of this project. This is a 40B proposed at 596 North Avenue. The previous two hearings were dedicated to architecture, and the consensus that we got from the last hearing 2 weeks ago was that the members and members of the public were still looking for some design changes to mask the visual impression of the massing in the buildings and to give it a more residential feel, as well as to push the building back away from North Avenue. So we've got Phoenix Architects on the line tonight, and they do have a very, I would say, conceptual sketch that we're happy to share with the board. But our request tonight with respect to architecture would be that the board members designate a subcommittee on that issue so that we can hash out some of the finer points and details and really get into the specifics of that at a subcommittee hearing. And then in the full board sessions, try to make some additional progress on the site civil and traffic issues so we can make good use of the time that we have in the 180-day public hearing for this project. So we can address that at the close of the hearing if the members are willing to vote on the appointment of a subcommittee tonight, but that would be our request regarding that issue. For tonight, the updated plans that were submitted by Williams and Barajas last week do show modification of the proposed building footprint, which in a nutshell flipped the massing of the building in 180 degrees to put the proposed bump outs that were shown to you last week towards the rear of the site and to pull the building back slightly to make it more in line in terms of street frontage with the adjacent buildings at 598 and 600 North Avenue. And Chris will go into that further. But as I said before, we're looking to get into the issues of design and architecture more fully in a subcommittee and at future hearings of this board. In terms of project updates, since we were last before you, we are scheduled to be before the Traffic Advisory Committee on Friday of this week. As you heard from a previous hearing that body is meeting this Friday, we are also scheduled to be before them. So we will keep you apprised as to the status of that and what comes out of that meeting with them. We're going to be meeting with our traffic engineers from Vanass and Associates, as well as Williams and Barajas, to go over their recommendations for the site access and any traffic concerns that they have, given the location and the obvious presence of other nearby housing developments, including the one that you heard earlier tonight at Lake Quantapowhat. In terms of wetlands issues, we have been in touch with Elaine Vreeland, the conservation agent for the Conservation Commission. And as she alludes to in her letter that was submitted to the board, and we've had a chance to review it, the commission and Elaine specifically is in the process of reaching out to Mass DEP with respect to the classification of the Lake Quantapowhat and the wetland, which is on the rear of our site, specifically whether that wetland is designated as a what's called a Zone A public water source. And Chris will go into that further in detail in his presentation. But in a nutshell, board members, what that would mean is if that wetland and the drainage stream, which goes past our site under North Avenue and down to Lake Quantapowhat, if that is designated as a Zone A, that would apply some additional protections on our site, which would affect how the stormwater management system is designed. The good news on that front, as Chris will discuss, is that the project site has been designed to account for that. And so there may be some changes that would need to be made, but not wholesale changes to the stormwater management system that was designed. The additional issue that Elaine Vreeland conveyed to us that she and the commission are interested in looking into is whether the drainage stream that runs from the wetland behind our site to Lake Quantapowhat is a perennial or an intermittent stream. And the importance of that is that if it were determined to be a perennial stream, it would be subject to the River Protection Act under the Wetlands Protection Act, which applies an additional level of protection for the site within 200 feet of what are designated as rivers or perennial streams. The way that this issue is determined is to have the wetland delineated by the Conservation Commission, which just is a fancy word to say that it's located and designated as what type of a wetland it is. So we're in the process of filing for a delineation of that wetland. And in the process of that, the determination will be made as to whether it is perennial or intermittent. We have had a preliminary study of the stream and believe it to be intermittent. And so we'll be looking to review that issue with the Conservation Commission shortly. And again, we will keep you apprised as to the status of that, which will be ongoing during your hearings on this matter. One final point from Elaine Vreeland is she indicated to me in my conversation with her that she's willing to participate in a subcommittee if one is designated on site civil and wetlands issues by this board. Although the commissioners themselves are not eligible to participate, Elaine is willing to be there as their representative and be able to convey what happens in that working session along to the commissioners. So with that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my introductory remarks. So I'll pause there if the members have anything they'd like to discuss with me or any questions. And if not, I would like to hand it over to Chris for his presentation of the site civil and wetlands.
Board members, anything?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, where do we stand with getting a consultant?
So got an update today. They have not formally approved it. Not sure what the delay is. I did get some correspondence back. They were asking whether our meetings would be in person or virtual. It may affect what consultant that might be available or willing, again, depending on the type of meeting it is. So that was the last correspondence I heard today, and Erin's been reaching out to them as well. So not sure why it's taking so long, but I would agree, I think, with Jesse's initial comments that we should look to form a subcommittee and get it going. And if MHP hopefully responds soon, we bring them into the fold, right? But we should get going because I just don't know how much more we can really do with this without, getting that subcommittee going with representatives here, the applicant's team. And it sounds like Elaine, I had reached out to both Elaine and Rebecca Davis and asked if they would be willing and able to participate. And Rebecca responded and said yes, but Elaine would be fine. She's the other agent. So if she's already sort of involved in some of these conversations, Jesse, I would say, we can definitely reach out and include her. But that's what I was going to give that update, Chip. But that's where we stand there. So Aaron and I will keep pushing on it, hopefully soon.
My understanding, Mr. Chair, is that there's a lot of 40B activity going on around the state now. So MHP is spread pretty thin in terms of their consultants.
Okay. But again, I would agree with you. We should just get it going because it seems like the logical next step to get into the details. And whenever they respond and we get somebody, we'll bring them into the fold, get them included in future hearings, subcommittee hearings. Okay. Anyone?
Excellent.
Yep. Board members, any other comments or questions? All right. I guess time to move on to Chris's presentation.
One quick question, if I could, Mr. Chair, regarding the subcommittee. When last I was before you on the Tarrant Lane project, which we'll hear about later tonight, we were involved in a subcommittee with Greg and Amy, which was done at the time not in a public session. For this hearing, is that the preference of the board to do that in a public session on a publicly available Zoom or in a private meeting? And does the board intend to vote on that, or is that something you'll arrange informally off the record?
No, I don't want to revisit the history, but we probably, it may have been a misunderstanding or miscommunication around whether a meeting of two people constituted a quorum and needed to be formally a public hearing. Tarrant Lane probably should have. And the most recent one with Crescent definitely was, and that's in concert with town council. So any two members meeting and having discussions like this needs to be considered a public hearing, noticed, minutes taken, and so forth.
Certainly, that's certainly fine with us, Mr. Chair. I think if we're going to do it that way, we would need to schedule the session in the public hearing tonight so that we could go ahead and move forward before your next meeting, unless you plan to do that at the next meeting.
No, well, again, how we handle it with Crescent, we got two volunteers to work with you offline and set dates because their availability, your applicant's team availability, we might not know all that tonight, but they will get properly noticed, 48-hour notice, put on our website, and any member of the public would then get, have an opportunity to attend. So they'll get properly noticed. We just won't set it up tonight in the interest of knowing everyone's schedule and when the first one could possibly be. Because now we got to reach out to Elaine. We don't know her availability. Our evenings, depending on who's involved, is it days going to be better than evenings? So it'll depend on who's involved and reaching out to Elaine and whoever else. So maybe we spend a few minutes and just summarize at the end. Board members think about it. I'm not sure who's going to jump into this one. But think about it, and we'll voluntold a couple of people at the end.
Maybe draw straws, see who's the unluckiest one.
Right, the virtual straws will be drawn.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Okay, Chris, with that, could you go ahead and share your screen and provide your presentation? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. For the record, Chris Sparagis, civil engineer from the office of Williams and Sparagis. And I'm going to walk you through the site plan and some of the changes that we've been working on. Let me first share our PDF here. We've already talked a little bit about the property in general. The subject property has an address of 0 North Ave, and in the near future, we hope that this will be 596 North Avenue. And this is the shaded region here. We're a 5-acre parcel, just over 5 acres. You can see north is up in this direction along Quannapowitt Parkway, and just to the south is the MBTA commuter rail. And we are just about 1/3 of a mile from our proposed driveway entrance to Route 128 over here, and then the town of North Reading, not too far away from the other project that was being discussed earlier tonight. The topography on our site and the existing conditions, here we are zoomed in a little bit. This is the development area, which is just on the northern side of this wetland line here. This is just under an acre of land that we're going to be that we'd like to develop. And from a topography standpoint, all of our land slopes essentially from North Ave back onto the site and towards the wetland. We have a topographic high of about elevation 86 here, and a topographic low down at a culvert at the street here at about elevation 81. So it's relatively flat. We have about a 5 foot grade drop, 4 or 5 foot grade drop across the site in this fashion. In terms of wetland resources on the property, we have a bordering vegetative wetland that's delineated here that we had our professional wetland scientist delineate. And so the property has a bit of wetland in the middle of it. And then on the back side, on the south side, is another upland area. And this area shows a little bit better. I'm going to flip over a couple of sheets here. Here is the area of the property that's mostly wetland. And so our property is about 60-40, so 60% wetland, and then 40% upland. There's a big upland piece back here, and then the piece up front that we'd like to develop. Now, if I can share with you a more regional map, I just want to give you a little bit of background on some of the questions that have been raised by the town engineer and the Conservation Commission office. When we take a look at these projects, one of the very first things that we do is we look at regional maps, and this is the GIS map that the state maintains called Mass Mapper. Here is our project site. It consists of these 3 parcels of land here. This blue area is that wetland that I was showing you earlier. If we zoom out just a little bit, you can see Lake Quannapowitt come into focus over on this area. So when we're looking at a piece of property for our clients, this is the first map that we pull up. We want to take a look at, is there a floodplain nearby? Are we near a drinking water supply or a tributary to a drinking water supply? Things that might affect development, things that we want to think about as we're developing a site. Because when we have more sensitive receptors like that, we have to design our stormwater management system to a higher standard. And so you've heard a lot of talk about a surface water supply and the word zone A. So there is a surface water supply that some of the waters in Wakefield flow into, and they lead over to the town of Linfield. Near the Saugus town line is Hawks Pond. This is one of the drinking water ponds for the city of Lynn. They pump water out of Hawks Pond that's over by Route 1 into some other ponds and up to their treatment plant way over here at Breed's Reservoir, much higher in elevation than where we are back here at Lake Quannapowitt. So Lake Quannapowitt is the headwaters of the Saugus River. And the Saugus River empties out on the northeast side, right over in this area. And the Saugus River makes its way into Reedy Meadow, which is this big wetland out here on the Wakefield-Linfield town line. Somewhere in the middle of Reedy Meadow, there's a dam and a diversion canal that channels water from the Saugus River over to Hawks Pond. And so the DEP recently updated their maps to include that canal and any tributaries that flow into the canal as tributaries to this water supply. And if I turn this layer on here called the Zone A, you'll see them come into focus. So you can see at Hawks Pond, that setback is a 400-foot setback because this is the actual reservoir. This is the water supply. It has the Zone A extends 400 feet from the bank of Hawks Pond. And then any tributaries to Hawks Pond are also considered protected, and they're designated by this blue outline. If we chase them back, we can follow the Saugus River all the way back to Lake Quannapowitt. Now, Lake Quannapowitt has also been designated as a tributary. Now, the definition of tributary is an open body of water that flows due to a hydraulic gradient. So from uphill to downhill, we know that the water flows into Lake Quannapowitt and out. And so DEP's drinking water program has designated Lake Quannapowitt as a tributary. You can see that that Zone A only extends 200 feet, not 400 feet, because Lake Quannapowitt is not the public drinking water source. It's only a tributary. And then you can see how the state's identified other tributaries that extend under 128 and head over into Reading here. We also know that there are other pipes and drainage systems in the town of Wakefield that flow into the lake. The next thing that we did, once we realized that the state has not mapped anything on the west side of North Avenue as a tributary, we knew that it wasn't going to be considered that as we developed our plan. But then we stopped at DPW and we pulled up all the plans that they had so that we could understand, where does this water go? So there's a 36-inch pipe underneath North Avenue, and it discharges into the street drainage. And then it turns down Willard Road in a corrugated metal pipe. It's 27-inch by 42-inch, and it discharges directly into Lake Quannapowitt. So we recognize this, and we know that Lake Quannapowitt is a tributary. So when we designed our stormwater management system, we took it to the next level. And what I mean by that is that DEP stormwater management regulations require, as part of the 10 standards, to treat water to different levels, depending on what you're proposing to do on the site and where the water ultimately discharges to. And so if we were discharging to a tributary, that tributary and any wetland that borders on the tributary are considered something called an ORW, an outstanding resource water. And so if you're discharging stormwater to an outstanding resource water, instead of treating the first half-inch of runoff from hardscapes and paved areas, the DEP asks you to double that and to treat the first 1 inch of rainfall. In addition, because you're discharging water potentially under the ground in close proximity to a tributary, they also ask you when you're near a tributary and discharging to an ORW, and you have an infiltration device, which I'll go into this in a little while. We do have one underneath the parking lot here. Normally, you're supposed to treat water to a certain percentage total suspended solids removal before sending it off-site, 85%. If you have an infiltration device that's tributary to an ORW, or if you're in a critical area, and we would be if this was an ORW, then they ask you to pre-treat the water before infiltrating it into the ground to at least 44%. And so, knowing that we were relatively close to Lake Quannapowitt, we went ahead and designed our stormwater management system to treat 1 inch of runoff from our paved surfaces. And through the use of a pre-treatment device, it's a proprietary treatment device right here, I'll go into it in detail in a little bit. We're pre-treating our water before infiltrating it into the ground to at least that 44%. So the way we designed our system was we just assumed, because this water does eventually make it into Lake Quannapowitt, let's treat it a little bit more, even though we don't have to. Now, Bill Renault and the Concom agents, Elaine and Rebecca, have reached out to DEP. I have spoken with Bill and told him who our contact is at DEP. He's a senior hydrogeologist in Boston. And we've reviewed many sites over the years with this gentleman. He's in the drinking water program, a senior hydrogeologist, and their focus is to identify and keep track of these tributaries and update the maps accordingly as new information comes along. Sometimes tributaries are shown on a map and they're wrong, or they don't exist. We've had situations like that where we've walked sites with Bruce and he says, yeah, there's no stream here, so no tributary. You guys are good to go. We've had other projects where, geez, this looks like a tributary, Bruce, and it's not mapped. What do you think? And we've walked away from projects before with our clients and advised them to walk away because they were too close to something that we thought was a critical area. So I've also reached out to Bruce, and if Bill and Rebecca and Elaine would like to invite Bruce out to walk this area and take a look at the streams that run through the property, we're happy to do that. But we kind of did a sort of preemptive thing to make sure that we were treating our stormwater, assuming that maybe this might be an ORW anyway. Before I go into so let's go on to the more detailed design information here so that you can understand a little bit more about what we're proposing to do. You heard Jesse allude earlier. I'm going to flip back to the plan that we submitted first. This was the previous plan, and it's gone through one iteration at least, where we had some bump outs on the front of the building here. So in this latest version that I shared with the board last week, we pulled the building back about 6 feet, and we've taken those bump outs from the front and put them on the back. So the building has come back about 6 feet, which required our parking field to also shift back 6 feet. That's really cramping us between the edge of the proposed grading and the wetland. And so we've changed our limit of work along the wetland line to be more protective of the wetland, simply because we're starting to run out of space. The more we move the building back, the closer we get to the wetland. And so you'll see now on the revised plan that the parking lot has shifted backwards, and we've added another retaining wall along the southwest side of the property here, maintaining a minimum of a 15-foot setback from the wetland in this area. We didn't just make that up. This is a similar setback situation to the project that was approved next door at 598. And we've designed projects that were just as close to the wetland in the past in other communities, and it is an acceptable setback for commissions and DEP if they so choose. So our layout is pretty simple. We have one driveway access coming in that accesses 59 parking spaces. Our driveway width is 24 feet wide. We've shared our plan with Chief Sullivan, and I believe he's submitted a letter describing the things that he wants to make sure that we comply with. And I think this plan will be able to complies with those wishes. The parking consists of mostly 9 by 18 parking spaces. There's our layout plan here. So we have 26 9 by 18 parking spaces here. And then we come around the back here. We're proposing to shrink the width of the spaces by 6 inches. So we have 37 parking spaces along the back here that are 8.5 by 18. We have our dumpster area in the back here for easy access. And we're proposing sidewalks that'll take pedestrians from the building along the parking field, from the back of the building to the front of the building with another sidewalk access here. And we're also proposing, and this was something I wish that comments that came along during our very initial presentations to the Board of Selectmen and some others in the town. We're proposing a 5-foot sidewalk out here in the right-of-way of North Avenue. Our grading program is also very simple. What we did is we designed the project because the parking field really isn't that big. We have a high point here, a high point here, and that allows the water to drain in our parking lot to a low point in the back of the site here, and then in the middle of our parking lot here. So we have 2 catch basins, and then they simply connect via a couple of drain manholes, not a lot of drainage structures, to that pre-treatment device, and then into a series of underground aluminized steel pipes. They're 21 inch in diameter, and they're welded together as one system. It's a funky shape to get it over to this part of the site. And there's a reason why we did that as well. And I can go into that a little bit later on. So our stormwater management design does a good job complying with all 10 standards. And Mr. Renault is going to be reviewing that in detail. We do have a little bit of water heading out to the highway from our high point here. So this section of the driveway does come out onto North Avenue right now. But as we've been starting to pull the building back into the site, it's been opening up the front of the site here. So we're trying to see if we can come up with an idea to capture this additional impervious surface and maybe running it into a shallow swale-like feature here, which would allow us to do some treatment and infiltration to hopefully maybe even capture some more of this runoff here. Moving on in the site plan set, we have our utility plan, and we have all the major utilities that are available to us out in front of our site. There's an existing water main, and we're proposing to connect a new 6-inch fire service and a 2-inch domestic line to that line. Mr. Renault has identified or mentioned in his report that the town's consultant recently has said that there's a fire flow deficiency in this existing water main here, and he'd like to sit down with us to discuss how we can contribute towards the town's plans to improve that that fire flow out on the street here. So we'll be meeting with Mr. Renault in the near future about that. Our sewer service is located here. And then although there is gas available, the Wakefield Municipal Gas and Light Department has a moratorium on new gas service connections. So we will not be connecting natural gas service to the site at the present time. What our plan, this utility plan doesn't show, and I know it's a really important part of the plan. We've already had preliminary discussions with Vincent McMahon from the Wakefield Gas and Light Department about how we're going to power this site. And he would like us to place a 5x7 transformer pad on this island here with bollards. And the main utility, the primary, will come through. He'd like us to do something like this. That'll come out to the street to a new utility pole there. In the next go around, we're going to add that information to the plan and coordinate landscaping around that transformer pad with our landscape architect. That leaves the lighting plan. And again, the lighting plan is very simple because we don't have a very large area to light. And if we scroll down here, we proposed 8 pole mounted lights, LED fixtures. We're still working out the details on the final design. They're between 15 and 16 feet high, and there are 8 of them located around the site to balance the light levels in the parking field. And those light fixtures are similar to other projects that we've done recently in Wakefield. So that's the end of my formal presentation, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm here to answer questions on the civil site tonight.
Thanks, Chris. Board members?
I have one simple question to start. You could have more later, but people that move in here, don't you think they're going to walk around the lake? So if they walk out the front door, do you really think they're going to take a right, go down that walkway, then take the left, and then not just going to walk straight to the sidewalk out in front?
Mr. Lucy, are you suggesting that we want to maybe have a way to get them across the street?
No, to your front door, to the sidewalk right in front of you without taking a more direct path. People walk, straight out the door.
Right. That's a good point. This was even closer to the front before. That might make sense, and then eliminate this impervious surface here and have a shorter connection here. Yeah, I like that idea.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I guess it's time for me to weigh in. So flipping this front to back doesn't help this project, in my mind, architecturally or in relationship to the street. Basically just gives you a harder surface on the street as opposed to something that's a little more broken down. And I could see this building broken up into 3 sections and slipped along, basically along the street and pulling itself back. So it steps away from the street as it goes south, basically. It would be better if that would happen. And at the same time, the parking in the back, in order to allow for that, the parking would be askew more in line with the wetlands, and maybe even extending the retaining wall more like what's happened at the spaces next door. This would basically give you something that breaks the mass of this building down and fits into what is a neighborhood of a bunch of smaller buildings. It also pulls the building back, so it sort of becomes more aligned with the Knights of Columbus, at least pulling back that way along that edge. Not that the Knights of Columbus you want to basically make much of, because it needs a lot of help in itself, but that's a different story. So I could see this worked out in a little different way, basically to make it feel more segmented. And at this point, basically, you've made it less segmented in flipping it. So design-wise, I don't see this as a solution, as a master plan for basically this site. I think there's a lot more work to be done, and there may be ramifications of that I'm unaware of. But there's a lot of grading coming down towards the wetlands, all of which basically is not infringing on the wetlands, but certainly a retaining wall can basically follow along that wetlands to whatever distance it has to be away, and then fit within that raised property area that you've created. So I'm not on board with any part of this at the moment, the way it's shown or proposed to be shown.
I mean, you're saying you go back to the contours of the wetlands and put your parking there, and that allows you to bring the building back?
That where the parking is right now, if you would pull the right side down, basically, and have it not catty cornered, but maybe it's a 10-degree, maybe it's a 20-degree angle. It still can connect it to front parking area with the rear parking area, but would give you an opportunity to basically deal with the building on the right-hand side and the middle, stepping it back off the street. And right now, if you are there's a lot of tree activity basically along the edge of the street as it is right now. Not that the trees are worth a damn thing, but it would allow for more tree activity basically put out front to sort of mimic what's there to some degree, but with something that at least will live longer than a few years and then rot away out there. So I see this multiple idea basically to break this site down a little bit to allow it to mimic more of the neighborhood. This is just in a master planning sense. It's not even about architecture yet, except in the form and shape.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair, we appreciate that feedback, Mr. McBain. What you're seeing here is obviously this is the civil plan. So what this is intended as, the building footprint here, is just it's the flipping of the building 180 degrees just as a first step. We're not saying that this is the final proposal, and there's certainly a lot to go through, as you say, in terms of architecture. So this just a first step, and certainly more to come in terms of addressing these issues.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying, okay, nice try. I don't like it.
I also respect your comments, Mr. McBain. We're going to be in a balancing act here between your board and the Conservation Commission when it comes to the setback from the wetland. And I know that the Conservation Commission would love it if we can maintain a 25-foot no disturb zone. We're not going to be able to do that in all places here. I've already mentioned that the best we can do here at the present time is 15 feet. We're a little bit cramped. The other thing I'd like to point out to the board members is that if it turns out that the streams that flow through the property turn out to be tributaries and have that protection, It's also going to handcuff us a little bit on stormwater management location and the location of our stormwater management areas, which is why you'll note that our stormwater management area and the type of stormwater management area we chose is an odd shape with these pipes. We know that these streams have a bank, and if this is deemed to be a tributary, there are some limitations about what you can do within 200 feet of that bank. Now, that's not the riverfront area. I know that Jesse alluded to that earlier. There's a lot of evidence that points to this being an intermittent stream. This is strictly about the tributary to the water supply. You're not allowed to have a BMP, stormwater management area like this within 200 feet of a zone A. And that zone A will extend 200, potentially could extend 200 feet from the bank, which puts it very close to, where we've got this guy here. So we're gonna be a little bit hard pressed to move any of the building sections in this direction to the.
Oh, I'm not even thinking of moving it in that direction, basically. Yep. And what you've already shown is on those maps from the state, basically. The water, the physical blue area that showed water basically isn't even behind this site. It's more behind the next site over and goes up to the railroad tracks, basically. So this may be wetland, but it's not where they have indicated the amount of maybe the deeper area is that probably holds water, all year round or something. So as already indicated, there's a lot of work here to do, and it's just a matter of working it through at this point. And I don't look at this as pushing to the right. I look at it as pulling back from the street, but pulling it back in segments. You got to break the scale of this down, or maybe we need to make the building smaller.
That's what I was going to say, Jim. You wouldn't be so cramped if it was a smaller building.
So I know that's come up a couple of times already. That is the discussion about density. I stopped sharing my screen just so that I could share another screen here real quick. This is our CAD drawing. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Yep. So let me just turn on something here, which will help us kind of put some things into perspective. So one of the things that we did in pulling the building back is that we tried to line up the front of the building, with the other projects next door. I would also like to remind the board that the project at 598, which was a project that was approved for 18 units, was only built on about 15,000 square feet of land. And then next door at 600, they had less developable area, available than we do. With their units at 24, if you will. So with our acre, just under an acre here, we have more developable area than either of these two projects. And so that's the reason why we have more units than them. I don't think the site is cramped because we can fit an appropriate number of parking spaces with our building and maintain that setback to the wetland. But we'll take your comments under advisement, Mr. McBain, and go back with the architectural team and see what we can come up with.
Right.
And I would just say to that, land isn't exactly the same. It's not fungible. I mean, that's part of the difference here we're talking about is it building into the neighborhood and breaking it down. It's not just plain density. It's not definitional density. So I don't think that's what we're saying here at all is, apples and apples, just, hey, this building fit, they have more land, so we could do the same here. You're building into a neighborhood now. And I think that's what's not being taken into account.
Right, and you've heard it from many abutters, not just these board members. Hopefully you're hearing it. They have serious concerns about the scale of this building being directly across the street from single-family homes.
And just to make it even more blunt, the other ones are across the street, are not across the street from these building into a neighborhood now. So, I mean, that's, yeah. I think we've looked at this 3 or 4 times now. I don't think we need to see this as a reasoning for why we're building this size again. They need to take into account, we're now in neighborhoods. That's it.
Yep.
We certainly appreciate all those points, members. What we look at when we design a 40B project is what are the relevant design precedents, and 600 and 598 create the controlling design precedents from our perspective. What this board is required to do under the Chapter 40B statute is to treat this project equally as it does to other projects. So for sites that are designed similarly, the 600 and 598 specifically, we're entitled to similar treatment. Now, you make a good point, Mr. McIntosh, that this project site is closer to residential neighbors, although there's still a significant distance from this site, including across I believe it's a 4-lane road. That calls for certain,
it's a regular
different
2-lane road.
That calls for certain different treatment of the design of this, and that's what we look forward to going into in the subcommittee in terms of how to make this project look more appropriate, how to shield the massing through things like landscape architecture and building design elements to break up the visual appearance of the massing. So we'll go into all of that in the subcommittee, and we look forward to getting into those details.
This is a transitional site, basically into the neighborhood. So we have to find a way for it to transition into a neighborhood, which we've done on other projects, basically. Having buildings step into the neighborhood or step back from the neighborhood. And if you look at the plan that's in front of you right now, basically right on top of you, both across the street and down the street, basically, you need to somehow step into that area and mitigate. It's the sort of bookend to the 2 other buildings. And you got to treat it as a bookend and treat it as a bookend that's a transition piece to the neighborhood. Now, how many units end up in there, how big a mass it is something that has to be worked out with the committee, basically, and whether it will work or not. And at this point, basically, it seems to me we're just barely opening a door on what can fit in here and how it might master plan itself out on this site and still allow for the architecture and shield itself as well, basically, or mitigate its appearance on the neighborhood. Now there's, between trees and color and all the rest of the stuff, but we need to stay within the massing of this and how the master plan and massing works out on this thing.
Anyone else? Okay, Jesse, was that the extent of the updates for tonight?
I believe it was, Mr. Chair, unless the members would like to see the conceptual sketch that Phoenix is working on. As I said before, it's very, very preliminary. So it may be something to be left for the working group subcommittee.
I would say it should. Yeah.
Okay, then that concludes our presentation for tonight.
Okay. Board members, anything else before we proceed? Okay. Did not receive, I believe, any other correspondence for tonight. So I think we're covered there. All right. We'll open up the public testimony. If anyone has a comment or question, please raise your hand in the Zoom call. We'll call on you at this time. First hand I see up is Dennis Clarity. Dennis, I think we've seen this once tonight. Are you going to give us the same presentation? You're on mute, sir. Mr. Clarity, you're on mute.
Okay.
Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, it's Dennis Clarity, 1 Harvest Road. Can you see that screen?
We can. Are you planning to give essentially a similar presentation of what we heard earlier this evening?
Well, I'll be very brief.
Does it relate to the site? Does it relate to this site? The
Yes.
information we heard tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
It says the head of the Saugus River. It was a question as to whether or not this was a river or not. And it shows, this is the 1890 survey done by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It shows it as the head of the Saugus River. And then
hopefully there's been a study since then, but okay.
Yes, there has been, and I will bring that up right now. And do you see this map up? No.
No.
Do you see this?
Don't see anything.
Okay. Share screen. This was done in 1911. And if you, it just says Saugus River or Bear Creek. That was the 1911 site survey. So I'm just trying to help the board out, and I hope I'm not too early or too late. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Christine Vassapoli.
Hi, my name is Christine Mihail Vassapoli, and I live at 9 Walcott Street, which is essentially in a butter. Trains going by right now. So that's where I live. So I'd like to address the issue of water that needs to be properly drained from that culvert that we've been talking about. We have 2 toddlers, and since the buildings have been built, we have so much water and overpopulation of mosquitoes that we can't really even take them outside starting late afternoon during the summer and end of the spring. So we'd like to see, with the landscape, we'd like to see some sort of cistern or something like that built with the same functionality in order to help with the water. And when the first building was built, it was constructed with a basement, I believe. I talked to the builders. And the second building was built without a basement because of the water problem. After the second building, we started getting water in our basement in bad storms. So does this third building have a basement? What's the plan for the culvert? And also we'd like to, we were wondering if the developer could post a bond to ensure that no damage, water or otherwise, would be done to our properties as a result of this new building. Thank you.
Jesse or Chris, do you want to?
Sure, I can address that question. So we've dug test holes on our property that were witnessed by the town engineer in the vicinity of our proposed stormwater management area. So we know where the estimated seasonal high groundwater table is on our property. And the bottom of our underground stormwater system that holds the water and lets it leak out slowly is set a minimum of 2 feet above that estimated seasonal high groundwater table. And this building does not have a basement. We're going to be well above the estimated seasonal high groundwater table with all of our improvements. And there's no requirement or really a need for a bond that like the one that you described. Our charge is to make sure that we prove that we're complying with the DEP's 10 stormwater management standards, and the town engineer is going to do a good job with his office of making sure that we've complied with those things. We're professional engineers. Mr. Renault is a professional engineer, and it'll be thoroughly reviewed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no other hands, we'll close it to public testimony for the evening. So back to the board. Before we continue, I think we need to assign 2 board members to be part of the subcommittee and then work with Jesse offline together with the conservation agent to get the meeting started. And I'll continue to push on the MHP side. So board members, any volunteers?
I would too. I'll do it with Jim if he's gonna do it.
I think, Jim, you good?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay. So Jim and Tom, I will, Jesse, if you don't have, do you have their contact info? If not, I can make sure you get I send you their emails and you can reach out to them and start that process.
I do have Jim's contact information, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if I have Mr. Lucy's, but I can get that from you or from
Yeah,
Gail.
I'll send you right after this. Yeah.
Thank you.
You may even want cell phones too, just in case you need to talk to them. So make sure you get that. And then I would just work with them, as soon as tomorrow, start, selecting possible dates and, what times work for people in general, days, evenings, whatever. And then work through Gail to get them publicly noticed. Okay.
Understood. We will.
All right. Sounds good. Anything else, team? Board members for tonight?
Not from us.
Okay. So we're looking to continue for, now here's we get into like, how far out do we want to continue? 2 weeks, what would we be talking about if the subcommittee is now engaged? Are there other topics we could potentially get into in a full hearing?
May I suggest, Mr. Chair, that we spend the next hearing discussing traffic?
Oh, you think you'll have something for traffic? Okay. Okay, so continue to 2 weeks by May 11th, and we'll see where we stand, get any other updates and go from there.
Yeah, I think if that's acceptable to the board members, I think we'll have more to update you with after the TAC meeting on Friday. And if there's not, if there's still things in process, we'll request a continuance and come back 2 weeks after that.
Sure. Okay. Board members sound good?
Yep, I move we continue to May 11th.
Second.
Thank you, Greg. Any discussion on the motion? All right. Let's see, voting members, Tom,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Chip. Where'd Chip go? Chip, come off mute. Where are you, Chip?
Heads down.
You must be reading something.
Yep. Well, I vote yes, we're continued. You have approval to continue. So we'll see you in a couple of weeks, and I'll send you some correspondence shortly, Jesse, with their contact info.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris, for your time. Okay. All right. So that is the end of the new and continued hearings. Now we wanted to, with your attendance here, and maybe Chris as well, talk about 0 Tarrant Lane, case 19-23, and the status of the project and some of the activity that's going on up there. So where to begin? Jim or Chip, I know you may want to start us off because I know you guys did a site visit. You made some observations. We've reached out to the town. We've had conversations with the building department. There have been conversations with the town engineer, because it's our understanding the only thing they've received other than a demo permit is a drainage permit perhaps, but no building permits to date, right? So the only activity was supposed to be around that area. I think there's been conversations with the town engineer about that. But we had observed through Jim and Chip and their site observations, some other things that maybe had deviated from what this board approved for this project originally. And Jim, I think, articulated those in a memo that he shared with the rest of the board, and I think it's been shared with you, Jesse. And I think we just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page, and if there was something we needed to either have the team come back, if those deviations were needed for some reason, that we do those before they get done, sort of like ask for permission and say, look, these are minor essentially minor modifications. We'd like your permission to proceed, and here's why we think we need to do that, rather than making a whole bunch of changes. And then coming back and say, we made all these changes and now we'd like your permission, your forgiveness. But I'll stop there because I know Jim in particular maybe has more to add, and it was his memo that summarized everything. Jim, do you want to add anything at this point and just get into it?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, over a month ago, we got in a conversation, basically, I think Chip brought it up originally, was that a retaining wall on site had showed up. And on the drawings, basically went back to the drawings, and there was no legend basically for a retaining wall along the street. And I went back into the architectural drawings and looked at all the renderings we got from the architect, and again, no retaining wall. So Chip and I were of the impression, basically, there's no retaining wall there. And it clearly notes on the civil drawings where the retaining walls are. And this was not one of those areas where it's designated. So we got in a conversation basically with the DPW and with the building department on this particular matter as to what was going on out there. Because anyway, since then, I got a set of drawings to review for permit for the building and the landscape and the like. And I find, lo and behold, the civil drawing all of a sudden now shows a retaining wall there, which was not on the drawings originally submitted or approved by this board. I also found that the dumpster area had been changed. I found that, in fact, the buildings had some architectural changes on them as well, including the club area, and that the landscape had changed on the drawings, all of which should have come back to us before now and not have to have me spend a whole lot of time. And I did. I spent 2 days basically after one thing led to another, that I just sort of had to put, 3 pages or more basically together by sheet as to what the changes were. Now, I might understand why some of these changes were made. I think I understand why the dumpster area was changed. I'm pretty sure I understand why the landscape was changed. And as far as the architectural changes, they're more of an upgrade in my view to what's out there, but the board is unaware of these changes. So to me, the developer and the architect have got to come back to this board and walk us through all the changes that they've made on this permit set before I'll put my signature on the permit set as reviewed and approved. So if they're looking for the permit right away, I'm not signing off on this until this becomes legally, basically, a minor modification and approved by this board in its entirety. So that's where I stand at this point. They've got my list. They can very easily read it. It's laid out page by page, comment by comment. So for me, and for this board, it should be a presentation at the next meeting if they're prepared to give it. I don't think there's anything else to discuss at this point.
By way of starting to respond, Mr. Chair, through you, could I perhaps provide just a brief status update for all the members to make sure we're all on the same page? I believe at least Mr. Feeney was not on the board at the time this project was approved, so I just want to make sure we all understand what's going on. And for the record, again, Jesse Schomer representing the applicant on this. Here tonight also are, again, Chris Barages, the record architect, Rob Schaefer is on the line as well, and also owner's representative, Anthony Buonacorso, the developer, is available for questions. The board probably recalls this project was approved, I believe it was in October of 2019, just before COVID-19. The project has been delayed because of that a number of times, but is currently underway. The demolition of the Air Force housing is completed, and they're currently undergoing grading and blasting work on the site, earthwork. And the comprehensive permit for this project does allow that process to happen while the process of final approval through the subsidizing agency is underway. And that process is underway currently. We're expecting to have final approval for mass housing within, I would say, on the order of 4 to 8 weeks. But the comprehensive permit does allow these kind of interim permitting activities. So for example, the demolition, the earthwork, and also the foundation permits, which is currently something that the developer has applied for. I'll leave it to Chris to address specifically the issue of the retaining wall that you mentioned, Mr. McBain. But in brief, it is our intention and was all along to come back to this board to file a full presentation of all of the specific changes that are being made, including the ones that you noted in your memo, Jim, and we appreciate you taking the time to carefully look through the plans and prepare that for us. So we will be prepared to provide a full presentation on all of those details and the reason why those changes were made. The board may recall in the comprehensive permit, there is a process for approving what I believe were described as minor modifications. And we fully do intend to go through that process and getting your review and approval of them. We would propose to do that not at the next meeting of the board, but in 4 weeks at the second meeting in May, by which time we'll have a fuller sense of the extent of the changes, including the ones that you mentioned, Jim, and any others that rise to the level of modification that warrants your attention. With that having been said, I'd like to hand it over to Chris for him to discuss the retaining wall. He'll be able to get into that in greater detail than I can.
Well,
I'll be brief.
Hold on for a minute, Chris. Let me say this. This set of drawings should never have been submitted for a permit. Never been submitted for a permit, and wasting my time. It should have come before this, hold up. It should have come before this board, made a presentation, so that when it came to the building department and my signing off, that I knew basically what the board had approved. And all they've done is wasted my time and energy, basically, to go through every page of these drawings, which generally I don't have to do. And this is probably the worst case I've come across to date. I can think of one more that's worse, but this is right up there. So I'm not happy with having to sit here and discuss these things and have to make a 3-page list of what has changed on this job, basically, at this point. It should have been done long before it came in to the building department. And certainly the drawings were done long before they came into the building department. So there was absolutely no excuse for this project not to have come before the board and laid out what the changes were. These are all design changes for reasons I can clearly understand and would even approve. But I don't have to sit here basically and listen to excuses at this point, quite frankly. I just want to close the case. But I'm not happy with having to sit here and deal with this now and even try to dredge up all that stuff, because I'm going to have to go back and look at the drawings, basically, and go through my list of 3 pages to refresh myself at this point, which means I'm going to spend more time. So they should all know that I'm not a happy camper for having to spend my time. I could do other things besides spend my time looking at these drawings. That's all I'm going to say at the moment.
Understood. I certainly respect that perspective, Mr. McBain. I won't spend any more of your time explaining the reasoning for the timing sequence. There are reasons for it, but I understand that you're unhappy with the way that it was done, and we'll work to resolving the issues and making sure that you're satisfied and the board members are satisfied with the changes. For tonight,
but more importantly, Jesse, I'll weigh in because I'm the one that first saw it. I never would have approved and don't plan on approving the retaining wall. It never was the intent to have a retaining wall there. All our renderings were flat parking lot. That raises car lights 3 feet into neighbors' yards. I mean, the change that has been built on site is horrendous.
Mr. Chair,
Horrendous.
if I can, my quick explanation will shed a lot of light very quickly.
It's not going to shed any light.
It'll take.
The light of why you did it might shed light. Allowing it is.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Tarbell, but the retaining wall in question and all the retaining walls that we had shown on the approved drawings that your board voted on were always on the drawings. And we had a couple of different types of walls. If you'll indulge me just for 5 minutes, Mr. Chairman, I can show you the approved plans and show you what those retaining walls are.
How about, is there a reason to do it now versus when we go through all the changes?
Not at all, but we had 2 different symbols. I just want to be very clear to explain to Mr. McBain and Mr. Tarbell that we had 2 different symbols for retaining walls on the plans. We had a 2 foot wide, a large modular block wall, and then a 1 foot wide modular block wall in various locations on the site. For the majority of the retaining walls along the perimeter, we had the large blocks, the large recon style blocks. And we had envisioned during the permitting process that we would use a smaller modular block, the 1 foot wide blocks along the frontage of the parking area. If you take a look at the approved plans, you'll see all those retaining walls there, and then along the driveway entrance. During the preparation of the construction drawings, a decision was made, and we'll explain this in greater detail, to go to to have all walls be the same type of wall. But those retaining walls that Mr. McBain and Mr. Tarbell are referring to were always on the plan since day one.
Okay, well, we'll get into it because you can show the plans. Maybe it was an oversight.
And then show me all the corresponding material with everything else along that road that shows walls there, because there's not one bit of corresponding material.
You mean like elevations or site plan?
Yeah.
Elevation.
Yeah.
I know we spent a lot of time looking at site views coming this way on Hopkins, that way on Hopkins.
Yeah.
And there were renderings and showing the buildings and the landscape and yeah.
Exactly. None of them had a wall. None.
And either way, there was a material change, right, Chris? So it should have come before us. There's like Jesse said, there's a process in the decision where any change to the plans has a process, and this could have been caught and dealt with before. And maybe, we could have found our mistake if there even is one, but either way, the process wasn't followed that was there to catch something like this.
Yep.
Understood.
Yep.
So we would request to come back before you. It wouldn't be a full public hearing. It would just be for an informal presentation of the proposed changes, along with a request to ratify them as a modification of this project. There is a standard under the 40B regulations for what is a major and what's a minor modification. Major modifications do require a public hearing, but those are significant changes, things like increasing units more than 10% of what this board proposed, increasing building footprints more than 10%, changing the tenure of the project. Things of this nature typically are deemed to be minor changes, but we're happy to provide a full presentation on all of them. And again, our apologies for the confusion and not being before you, 6 to 8 weeks ago. In terms of tonight's hearing, my understanding is that the building inspector was looking for an authorization from this board, the clearance for him to sign off on foundation permits, as to which there has been no change. The foundation permit, the foundation construction process, my understanding is a roughly 4 to 6 week process. So we would request that the board convey to the building inspector your approval to sign off on foundation permits only, nothing for vertical construction, and nothing for the issues that were noted in Mr. McBain's memorandum. And then we'll be back if you have time in your schedule for the second meeting in May for the presentation that we've been talking about on all these issues.
Yeah, they'll be working on foundations. It's a 4-month build for the foundation, so it's quite a bit of time. It'll put them quite a bit behind schedule.
I don't remember the building inspector asking for that sign off. I don't know if I missed it in an email.
That's my understanding. It has been conveyed to me. I'll admit that that's third-hand information through the construction contractor, through the developer, and on to me. So perhaps that could be conveyed through you, Mr. Chair, to the building inspector, just to make sure that he's aware that he is authorized under the comp permit to issue foundation permits while final approval is pending. And I'm happy to send you the site in the comp permit that authorized him to do that. But I think he was just looking for the green light from this board. And hopefully the board is willing to do that, knowing that we'll be back in 4 weeks to discuss all the changes.
What's the foundation permit based on? Is it built based on a set of plans that are now not formally approved?
Chris, could you shed light on that?
I mean, what am I
yes.
basing on? If I say, yeah, go ahead, building inspector. Yeah, we're fine. But what's it based on? What's the basis for that recommendation?
So the final foundation design wasn't completed until after this board approved the comprehensive permit. So there are minor changes to the footprint of the building. Yes.
That we have not seen.
That's correct. They've been submitted to the building department, but you have not seen them.
So then what are we approving?
It's not a formal approval that you're issuing tonight. It's more, I think the building commissioner is looking for just a green light that
you're asking us to approve and to allow them to build foundations that have changes from what we approved.
Yeah, for the largest to date project in Wakefield, there's too many. I think this is what the building inspector is looking for, but I heard it third hand. I don't really know.
I can reach out to him tomorrow. I just don't, there were a few emails back and forth on this and where things stand. But I just don't recall him saying, hey, the outcome of tonight, if you can let me know if you think the board's okay with moving forward, at least with foundations. I just don't think that was ever communicated. So I'll reach out to him tomorrow, get clarification on where he's coming from, because I don't want to speak for him, and maybe something did get lost in translation if Jesse's representing something second or third hand. But I'll reach out to him directly, and I hear the board's concerns. I don't know that I'd be willing to say, yeah, go ahead based on a plan we haven't actually seen.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I see my client, Anthony Bonacorso, has unmuted himself. I wonder if he has some additional information that I'm not privy to more directly.
To get right down to it, though, either way, we haven't seen a plan.
I think that's true. The bottom line, I think, from our perspective, though, is these kind of very slight modifications from what we're seeing by this board as a preliminary plan, which is what you are approving, as compared with the construction drawing set. Those kind of changes, there's not, under the 40B statute, there's not a requirement even for an approval. It's deemed approved.
But there's a process in our decision. When we took a good amount of time to actually hash out that process.
Right.
Well, so why aren't we following that?
That's what we're looking to do when we come to you in 4 weeks' time.
Good. Jesse, to your earlier comment, everybody on this Zoom was a member of the board when this went through. So I was a member.
That's my mistake then.
So I'll have to tell my family what I've been doing on Wednesday nights.
I'll be doing the same.
Excuse me, gentlemen, if I may, it's Anthony Bonacorso. Thank you all for your input. And Mr. McMahon, I appreciate your effort and what you have put in looking at this. I have directed my team to respond to your list of everything that you have provided. I read through it, and we were discussing, and our intent the entire time was to present to the board any and all, if there are changes, whether they're minor or not, to present to the board for the final approval, because that is part of the process, part of the permitting process. Well aware of it. We discussed it many times. In the case here about the foundation permit, we are looking to proceed with the foundation, so we are not further delayed. but the footprint of the building and everything else has remained as it has from the beginning. Some of the things that we were working on is the deck, the structure of the deck, the materials, and how the structure was going to be engineered. I believe that you do have a copy of that in the permit, shows a foundation permit, or the foundation itself, excuse me, not the foundation, the foundation plans. I do believe you all have a copy of it. What we would like to do, as Jesse had mentioned, is proceed with the foundation so we are not further delayed, but yet set up a time, and this is exactly what we were discussing these last several days, is to address every single concern that you have, especially when we go vertical, because we're not going vertical at this time. As you know, we are excavating, we are blasting, and we want to proceed with the foundation permit. To wait another 4 weeks for that would be pretty catastrophic to the project. That's not a delay that we can absorb. So if there's another process, or if there's a way to bring this up tomorrow or the next day or whatever we need to do, my understanding is Ben is looking for an okay from the ZBA to say issuing a foundation permit is not going to have any negative impact. But we do intend to go back to you as agreed for the final building permit with all the modifications and changes that we have to date. If you would grant us that privilege and opportunity to proceed with the foundation permit, that is an absolute major request that we have. So we are not delaying this project, and Chris has attested to that. Nothing has changed in the footprint of the building or any of that. And you do have a copy of the foundation permit. If you need to look at it again or discuss it with us this week, that would be we are open to that.
They don't have they do not have the permit set resides at the building department. And I've looked through the drawings. The board members themselves probably haven't seen them unless they've gone down and looked at the SEP down at the building department. They didn't receive them. The last submission they would have got was a decision set granted by this board. So, and I assume the first buildings that are going to be worked on are going to be the ones up around 128, moving back into the site. And I was a little confused when I looked at some of the foundation work along the edge of the outside the site. And I think I even commented in the architecture, basically, of the changes in the way the architecture was presented on that outside edge towards 128. But I didn't spend a whole lot of time on the foundations to know what has changed or not changed. What I saw is in my memo. That's it.
Can I ask a clarifying question? And I think this will. So I think we're hearing two separate things. I think it was Chris or maybe Jesse that said there was some changes to the foundations. Then
I thought I heard that too.
Anthony is saying there wasn't changes. Which is it?
Well, when you refer to changes,
I can tell you without a doubt that there are very minor changes to the footprint of the foundation. There always are between the permit set and the construction set. So I can't tell you that they're identical because they're not. But they're very, very close to the permitted drawing set. But I've seen them, and we've calced them, and they're ready to be laid out by our office. But there are slight changes. There always are.
Sorry, I'm not a builder. I don't know these things, but what I am is a lawyer, and I know when we talked about this and we drafted this decision that had a process for changes. And I think you were there when we were talking about this too. So it's not as simple to me. It's not as simple as the changes, they're small, and then we tell the building inspector to go ahead. There's supposed to be a process. If the building inspector, I think you're supposed to submit proposed changes to the building inspector first. It didn't say, tiny changes. Well, changes are supposed to be submitted to the building inspector. If the building inspector says the de minimis, he's allowed to go ahead. If
what
not,
we're referring to, right? What we're referring to.
I know what you're referring to, but it's changes, and you're asking us to approve something where we haven't seen the changes.
And I appreciate that. I just wanted to be clear one thing. Some of the de minimis change that we're referring to, a lot of them happen to be that's when we go vertical. The foundation is the foundation.
But that's not what we've just heard.
On the ground. No, what I'm referring to is
Chris just said there were changes to the foundation.
Yeah, the vertical stuff is a
He
separate
specifically
issue.
said there
Yeah.
were changes to the foundation.
And the
The
vertical stuff
foundation,
will
right.
come in 4 weeks. That's fine. We understand
That's
it. The
fine, right.
foundation, Chris just said there's changes. The changes haven't followed the process. I don't know how we approve it if it hasn't followed the process.
And if it's
I'm
de
not
minimis,
gonna, I have nothing.
and
Yep,
if Chris
yes,
says it happens all the time, there are typically minor changes from what we approve to when they actually get on site. And the building department
yeah,
inspector sees those and goes, yep, this
Good to
happens
go.
all the time.
Yep.
They're de minimis, you're good.
Yep.
Why hasn't he done that? Is he not
Just
done that because he's
to-
not sure if they're really de minimis? Why would he be looking
To
for us?
jump in here, my understanding is that the building inspector does not have concern about these changes. They are de minimis. He's aware that Mr. McVeigh has reviewed the plans and had some concerns, and he wanted us to come to this board tonight to make sure that you're aware of what's going on and get your blessing for him to issue the foundation permits. They are de minimis.
I'm concerned, why didn't he come to us? Why is the petitioner coming to us saying what Ben, who's the zoning enforcement officer, is looking for? This whole thing seems convoluted to me, Mr. Chairman.
and not showing us the plan.
I hear you. I'll reach out to, I want to cut this short because I think we've established the points. Don't want to go around and around on it anymore. It's late. I'll reach out to him tomorrow. Yeah, he's aware of all Jim's findings and all these other things. And at the end of the day, he probably is looking ultimately for that review that Jim referred to that says building stat looks good. Check, go ahead, issue a building permit. We're not there yet, right? But respectfully, just around the foundation, that's new information. He never asked me for a green light or a blessing about a foundation permit. So that's what I got to reach out to him tomorrow. That's a very specific aspect of these changes, not all the other stuff. So I'll reach out to him, get clarification. If he's comfortable with the foundation, he knows what varied from the approved set and he's good with it, he can make that determination. He's the zoning enforcement officer and the building inspector. And then I'll tell him we're going to deal with the other stuff in a month.
Okay, that's fair
All right.
enough.
Okay.
Yep, thank you. I think that makes sense. I think the difference between what's been going on there now is demo and earthwork, and now is actual things being built in the ground, the foundation specifically. So I think he just wants the confirmation that he is authorized to do it, and the comp permit does contemplate that. So we would appreciate you reaching out to him tomorrow.
And I know there's been conversations just to close with the town engineer related to the existing permit. Is there any open question with them, with the building department, I mean, with the town engineer?
Mr. Chairman, there were some questions that came up relative to some grading changes between the abutting property owners. Mr. Bonacorso and his team got together with his neighbors, and we were able to do a little bit of regrading between the properties to eliminate the need for some of these retaining walls, because we didn't have permission to go on to the abutting property owners and sort of just blend the grades, if you will, a little bit between the properties. That's one of the things that changed on the plans. So he had some concerns about drainage because we had to add a pipe as a precaution just to make sure that we weren't impounding water on an abutting property. So we're almost, I had a back and forth with him in his office this afternoon. We are very close to a resolution on that.
Okay. All right. I mean, it's related obviously to the project and might affect, again, final plans, building set, ultimately how things look, adding retaining wall, removing retaining wall, whatever. But I just knew that there was a separate conversation based on existing permitting and some of the concerns from his department. Okay. All right. I think we've done as much as we can do tonight. Thanks for being here and attending and staying on to at least discuss and get everything out in the open. I think we're closer to being on the same page now. We just got to work towards resolution, and we'll look for updates in a month, and I'll update board members once I hear from the building inspector tomorrow. So you all know how we're proceeding on that.
Dave,
Okay.
do you want us to give you authorization to act in favor of the board to give, if Ben is actually looking for us to say something, and they're not going to come back to us within 4 weeks, and they're asking for an impending that doom is going to happen if they can't keep going, should we authorize you to act if you feel comfortable that you and Ben understand what's going on?
I mean, you can, I just don't know. I don't know if we're gonna. Again, I haven't seen a plan yet myself, so I don't know.
Well, right, but I mean.
What green light am I gonna give him? I just think Ben's looking for, anyway, I don't know. I don't know, Chip, if it's warranted.
Or are we gonna wait till they present?
Well, the decision does give Dave, it goes from, building inspector. If he says it's not de minimis, then it goes to me and Amy are named,
Right.
or whoever Dave designates. So Dave can designate anybody or the board chair, I guess. So chair being Dave at this time, doesn't have to come back to a meeting. He can designate
Myself and say,
himself. Or a
on behalf of the
committee
board,
or
and my
whatever.
understanding of what's changed, yeah. So
Yeah,
I,
or say, Jim, take care of this. Yeah, what, like who, yeah.
Yep.
So it doesn't, even if he's looking for some sort of formal approval, it doesn't have to, per the language of the decision, doesn't have to wait until the 2 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever.
or require the board to authorize me
Yeah.
because it's in the decision already.
Yeah.
Right, okay. I like that. Thank you, Greg,
Yeah.
for clarifying.
Thank you.
Okay,
And Jesse, just to make sure you agree, so we're not sort of,
I do, yeah. I
Yeah,
think,
okay.
thank you for that suggestion. I think that's a good one. And if Ben needs to get on a call with, with Chris and yourself, Dave, we're happy to do it at your convenience.
okay, sounds good. I'll let you know if that's what needs to happen, so.
Okay, thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Yep,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank
all
you.
right. All right. Joe, sorry, man. We transitioned from North Ave to this Tarrant Lane discussion, and I forgot to let you out of timeout.
That's all right.
For the best.
Well, I don't know, maybe it's for your own benefit that you missed it all. No, I mean, it, you can listen to the recording afterwards if you want and catch up on it. But
Yeah. It's fine.
Tarrant Lane, I've got to follow up with the town, the building inspector tomorrow, on part of the follow-up on, so they want to move forward with foundation permits, and so, got to follow up with Ben on that. But then they're going to come back in a month and go through all the changes that have happened since we approved it. So that, to net it out, they'll go through all the details in a month, and you'll be here for all that good stuff. All right, board members, moving right along. Any other clerk or board comments? Any other topics for this evening?
Yeah, I can give you a few.
Briefly,
I have talked to Brian, and he's notified his client that on Water Street 259, basically the building's going up and it's quite a ways. We don't have a mock-up panel yet. We've been not notified, so I reminded Brian that we want a mock-up panel. He's notified to his client. Same thing at 581 Salem Street, mock-up panel. We don't have one. Doesn't look like they're making anything up. So again, he's notified them of that. I understand on Water Street, there may be a material change coming to us through Peter Sandor.
59.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that we should see sometime shortly. And then the other one is I have done a review of 610 Salem Street and found some anomalies there in that the civil set is an older set and a copy of an older set, and is not the approved date on it. It's like 2 versions back. There have been a few window changes on the drawings. Not a big deal. And then the dates on the set don't all reflect basically a permit set date that are on some of the other drawings, and some of the architectural drawings are not stamped and signed. So that you've seen my notification, because I think I sent it to you and Ben.
Yep.
Yep. So I'm not ready to sign off on those.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. Anyone else? Okay, we have some minutes to approve from April 13th.
I move that we approve the minutes from April 13th.
second,
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, Chip?
Yes.
Greg?
yes,
Jim?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Mickey,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Well done, Gail. Well done. All right. There's nothing further. Motion to adjourn is always in order.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
All right, yep.
All right. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your time tonight, everyone.